Chapter 20. Forbidden Secret Technique Taishu Step 9-Year-Old Agreement. Please choose one of the following rewards to inherit. 1. 18 years of lifespan. 2. Forbidden Secret Art, Supreme Void Step, its comprehension points. 3. Origin plus 180. Although 1.8 times Origin is good, it seems a bit meager compared to last time. And the only thing left is thinking. Qin Wanchuan's gaze shifted to the Supreme Void Step. Forbidden cultivation techniques were things outside the cultivation technique rank system. Most were incredibly powerful, but also came with unimaginable costs. The Qin family wasn't without them, but the old ancestor wouldn't let him learn them, saying he was afraid he'd go astray. I choose to. Qin Wanchuan decisively chose the Supreme Void Step. The next moment, a profound and abstruse cultivation method flooded his mind. He closed his eyes and concentrated, carefully comprehending this forbidden secret art. The Supreme Void Step. Burn spiritual chi to achieve extreme speed. Each step taken can ignore space, shrinking a distance of thousands of miles into just a few steps. When cultivated to major achievement, it can reach the realm of one step, one world. Interesting. Qin Wanchuan's lips curved slightly. He took a step, and the spiritual chi within his body instantly boiled, a faint silver light shimmering around him. Whoosh! His figure vanished instantly from his original spot, reappearing 10 feet away. So fast. A hint of surprise flashed in Qin Wanchuan's eyes. This speed far surpassed ordinary movement techniques, and was even swifter than some specialized instant teleportation spirit arts. Although the consumption was immense and accompanied by a terrifying cost. If spiritual chi was insufficient, it would burn his own body, a cultivation technique that would backfire. But he had a supreme Tao heart, and his spiritual chi reserves were 10, even 100 times that of an ordinary person, fully capable of supporting multiple uses. In other words, this cost could almost be considered non-existent. Qin Wanchuan tried the Supreme Void Step a few more times, his figure flickering erratically in the courtyard, ghost-like. This speed is indeed astonishing. He stopped, a sharp glint in his eyes. However, now is not the time to indulge in cultivating. He looked up into the distance, his gaze seemingly piercing through layers of clouds, reaching the lower realm, just waiting to find the Xianming realm. A few days later, young master, we found it. A dark guard knelt on one knee, respectfully handing over a jade slip. Qin Wanchuan took the jade slip, swept it with his divine sense, and raised an eyebrow slightly. The Xianming realm, one of the upper 1,000 provinces, is located southeast of the 10 Directions Immortal Court. Its domain is remote, spiritual chi is thin, and is mostly a gathering place for loose cultivators and impoverished noble families. Suspended Heaven Cliff is located in the northern region of the Xianming realm. It is perpetually shrouded in clouds and mist, and the bottom of the cliff is filled with miasma, making it difficult for ordinary cultivators to venture deep. Very good. Qin Wanchuan put away the jade slip, a slight smile playing on his lips. Prepare. I'm going to the lower realm. Not only did he want to obtain the heavenly fortune creation fruit, but he also wanted to visit the Han family while he was at it. As the heir, go to the lower realm naturally required notification. However, unfortunately, no. Qin Fuhai sat on the meditation cushion, not even raising an eyelid, directly rejecting him. Grandpa, I'm just going to the Xianming realm. I'll be back soon. Qin Wanchuan patiently explained. No, I have a supreme Tao heart, and am protected by chaos immortal light. Ordinary cultivators can't harm me. No. Seeing his silence, Qin Fuhai snorted coldly. So young, and already thinking about running around everywhere? Isn't the 10 Directions Immortal Court enough for you to stir up trouble? Do you know that this world never lacks geniuses? Only those who live to the end are the winners. No matter how high one's talent, if one falls halfway, it's nothing more than a handful of yellow earth. These words were more or less intentionally meant to scare him. For the Qin family, resurrecting someone was not a big deal. Of course, there was definitely a price to pay. Qin Wanchuan remained silent for a moment, ultimately having no choice but to retreat. Then he turned around and went to find the old ancestor. Unfortunately, it was the same old story. Too young, insufficient strength, even with a Tao protector, it's hard to guarantee foolproof safety, blah blah blah. But in the end, the old ancestor gave him a deadline. 9 years old. If you reach the 5th realm before you're 9, I'll let you go out and travel. The 5th realm, Spirit Sea Realm. The spirit platform transforms into a sea. Spiritual chi surges several times, allowing the use of more advanced spirit arts. Even a prodigy with a holy body would need at least around 20 years old to reach this realm. So the old ancestor's condition was somewhat harsh. But Qin Wanchuan agreed. With his talent, he had complete confidence. Returning to Wangchuan Pavilion, Qin Wangchuan sat at his desk, his brows tightly furrowed. If I can't go to the lower realm, then my mission is also stuck, isn't it? His gaze fell on the system screen. New mission, the strong descend. After you defeated your elder sister in the clan, your status improved and resources were no longer withheld. However, just when everything seemed to be getting better, your childhood friend, the Yin family's daughter, was targeted by Elder Imo Qianjue of the Qinglan Holy Land. This person, under the guise of taking on a disciple, is actually cultivating the evil cultivation technique, Yin harvesting and Yang supplementing art, specifically choosing young women with decent talent to bring back to the Holy Land. And after they mature, he drains their cultivation. She doesn't want to go, but her strength is low. Host, please go to the Yin family in Qing Shi Town to help. Mission objective: display your strength and deter Elder Imo Qianjue. Additional objective: defeat Elder Imo Qianjue of the Qinglan Holy Land. Third realm middle stage. Mission reward: simulation count +1, origin +50. Additional reward: origin +50. Note: this mission has a higher difficulty, so the rewards are exceptionally generous. Host, please act within your capabilities. Looking at the system's considerate reminder about the higher difficulty, Qin Wangchuan felt no emotion and even wanted to laugh. A third realm elder? You at least tell me a location. He shook his head, his expression somewhat complex. Someone in the third realm could also be an elder, which meant the location was likely in the lower 1,000 provinces. But even so, with only this much information, it was still like searching for a needle in a haystack. However, as long as there was time, finding the person with the Qin family's influence was only a matter of time. Then I'll wait. If this Yin family daughter dies before she's found, the mission fails, and there's nothing I can do. Qin Wangchuan's attitude towards missions was, if he could do it conveniently, he would; if not, he'd drop it. To think a single mission could lead him by the nose was wishful thinking. Not to mention, he also had the sign-in system. Even without doing missions, he could still get simulation counts. Next came several years of secluded cultivation. Before that, Qin Wangchuan waved his hand, summoning his subordinates, and gave them 2 tasks. First, retrieve the heavenly fortune creation fruit from the bottom of the Xianming realm cliff. Second, find a world in the lower 1,000 provinces that has a Qinglan Holy Land. If found, search nearby for a place called Qing Shi Town. If all conditions were met, then kill an elder named Imo Qianjue from the Qinglan Holy Land. Anyway, it didn't say I had to do it myself. Who cares who kills him? Qin Wangchuan's gaze deepened slightly, deciding in his heart that he would still have to personally visit the lower 1,000 provinces when the time came. He wanted to see if there was another Qin Wangchuan in that world. Chapter 21: The Qin family takes action, and the lower realm is in turmoil. Upper 1,000 provinces, Xianming realm. Northern region. At the bottom of the blood mist-shrouded hanging cliff, a 3-leaf Dao spiritual plant grew quietly in a rock crevice, its 3 translucent leaves emitting a faint spiritual glow. The cliff bottom was perennially enveloped by peculiar miasma, making it impossible for ordinary cultivators to muster even a shred of spiritual power here. Thus, it was also known as Death Cliff, because no one dared to enter, and heaven and earth treasure usually conceal themselves. This spiritual plant was able to grow safely to this day. Bloodhand Master, it truly is the legendary heavenly fortune creation fruit. A black-robed cultivator knelt on the ground, his voice trembling with excitement. I wonder who was so short-sighted as to not recognize such a supreme treasure, only taking a few leaves. But thanks to that, as long as you consume it, your path to becoming an emperor will be even more promising. In time, you will surely become the #1 person in the Xianming realm. The middle-aged man, known as Bloodhand Master, stood with his hands behind his back, his crimson robe fluttering without wind. His face was sinister, a hideous scar across his left eye, and he exuded a suffocating pressure. Bloodhand Yama, overlord of the Xianming realm's northern region, a quasi-emperor cultivator. He once single-handedly slaughtered 3 major sects, his fierce reputation well known. If I hadn't been ambushed and hidden at the bottom of the cliff, I really wouldn't have discovered it. After 2 years of bitter waiting, it has finally matured. Bloodhand Yama's eyes flashed with greed. Send out the order, blockade a 100-mile radius around Hanging Cliff. Those who trespass. Before he could finish, the sky suddenly darkened. 12 black figures streaked across the sky like meteors, instantly appearing at the cliff's summit. They wore uniform black battle armor, with a gold background and a black character Qin embroidered on their shoulders. Each of them exuded a restrained, yet chilling aura. Who goes there? Bloodhand Yama roared, blood mist surging around him. This is my territory. Retreat quickly. Noisy. The leading black figure spoke indifferently, waving his hand casually. Boom! Bloodhand Yama was struck as if by lightning, flying backward and crashing heavily against the cliff wall, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. He was horrified to discover that his peak quasi-emperor cultivation was as fragile as paper under this casual strike. The Qin family is handling business. Those unrelated quickly retreat. The Qin family. Of course, there were also branch families of the Qin family in the Xianming realm of the Upper Thousand Provinces, but these people would not have imagined that the few individuals before them were actually from the Ten Directions Immortal Court, a higher level. They were from the main Qin family. However, even a branch family, just the single word Qin, was enough to awe countless people. Master, spare me. Bloodhand Yama ignored his injuries, scrambling to his knees. This humble one was blind and did not recognize the Qin family's envoys. As soon as the words Qin family were uttered, the cultivators behind him instantly turned ashen, kneeling in unison, their foreheads pressed against the ground, not daring to lift their heads. The black figures were accustomed to such reactions. The leader walked directly towards the three-leaf Dao spiritual plant, carefully prying open its roots, and indeed found the heavenly fortune creation fruit hidden beneath. It was dug out along with its root system and placed into a specially made jade slipbox. The hand of the Qin family's Dark Guard leader, holding the jade slipbox, trembled slightly. Within the box, the heavenly fortune creation fruit glowed with a chaos halo. He recalled Ninth Young Master's casual instruction before their departure. Go get the heavenly fortune creation fruit. Now, each word was like a thunderclap in his heart. It turned out that a supreme treasure, rarely seen in 10,000 years, was truly hidden at the bottom of the cliff. After all, the heavenly fortune creation fruit had been extinct for 10,000 years. But the heavenly Tao rhythm emanating from his fingertips at this moment could not be faked. The innate Tao patterns flowing on the surface of the fruit were precisely the one fruit, one creation characteristic described in ancient texts. Only when the jade slipbox disappeared into the spatial ripples did the Dark Guard's taut backs slightly relax. Someone couldn't help but murmur. Even a supreme treasure hidden in such a place cannot escape young Master's Dharma eye. He might truly possess the ability to foresee the future. Silence. The leader glared at the speaker. Ninth Young Master's divine ability is vast. How can we speculate? As the few discussed, Master, Bloodhand Yama, ignoring the blood on his mouth, hastily pulled out a brocade pouch from his pregnant. This is my treasured 10,000-year blood Ganoderma. Although not as precious as the heavenly fortune creation fruit, it is still a rare item. Please accept it, Master. The black figure leader glanced at it, a look of disdain on his face. You dare to present such a thing? Keep it for yourself. Bloodhand Yama dared not show anger, even kowtowing repeatedly. It is this humble one's fortune to serve the Qin family. Does Master need a guide? This humble one knows this area like the back of his hand. No need, the black figure leader interrupted. We have other tasks. Before he finished, the 12 figures had soared into the sky, disappearing into the horizon in an instant, leaving only the cultivators at the cliff bottom stunned. Master, you just let them go? The black-robed cultivator asked unwillingly. This was a quasi-emperor. Wasn't it said that quasi-emperors were invincible? Why was he acting like a dog? Shut up. Bloodhand Yama backhanded the man, sending him flying backward, spitting blood, his eyes full of mockery. The Qin family in the central region of the Xianming realm is impressive, right? But as far as I know, that's just a branch of the Qin family. The true main Qin family is seated in the legendary heaven above heaven, a colossal entity that even the heavenly Tao must avoid by 3 points. His cold gaze swept over the crowd, his voice filled with chilling intent. Today, they only took the spirit medicine, which is giving us face. If you truly provoke the Qin family. Bloodhand Yama suddenly let out a sinister laugh, forming a claw with his 5 fingers and grabbing in the air. A distant mountain peak exploded with a roar. Annihilation? That would be the most pleasant way to die. After speaking, he looked in the direction the Qin family envoys had departed, still shaken, his eyes filled with reverence. Losing a supreme treasure is nothing. In this vast world, only life is paramount. To be alive is already a great fortune. Lower Thousand Provinces, Azure Wave Sea Realm. Northern Region, Qinglan Holy Land. At the peak of the cloud-shrouded mountains, the bells of Qinglan Holy Land rang out continuously. In the square, paved with white jade, hundreds of disciples stood in neat rows, their expressions solemn. Kneeling in the front row was a young girl in a plain white dress, about 13 or 14 years old, with skin like congealed cream and features as beautiful as a painting. She kept her head down, seemingly respectful, but her peripheral vision constantly darted towards the middle-aged man beside her, Qinglan Holy Land's third elder, her master, Elder Mo Qingyue. Qiyue, focus. Elder Mo Qingyue transmitted his voice, a gentle smile on his face. A great figure is arriving today. Do not be disrespectful. Qiyue nodded lightly, but sneered inwardly. It had been 3 years since she was brought to the sect by him. In these 3 years, not only had she firmly held the position of saintess with her heaven-defying talent, but she had also long since discerned the true face of this benevolent master. The inexplicably disappeared senior sisters, the shrill screams heard late at night, and the occasional scent of blood wafting from Master's room, all pointed to some terrifying truth. Master extensively recruits female disciples, seemingly out of kindness, but in reality, he cultivates evil arts in secret. Even I am merely a cauldron he is raising. Although I bear the name of saintess and possess a noble status, in reality, when I mature, it will be the time for him to harvest me, and I will become an object for his gratification. If I can seize this opportunity today. She plodded silently, her fingers unconsciously tightening on the corner of her clothes. Suddenly, clouds churned in the sky, and 9 golden lights pierced through the air. Greetings, Immortal! The Holy Land's sect master shouted loudly, being the first to prostrate. The entire Qinglan Holy Land, from the elders to the laborers, knelt in unison, their foreheads pressed against the ground. Inqiu secretly peered up, seeing 9 golden-armored cultivators standing in the air, their auras incredibly powerful. They also had a gold background with a black character Qin embroidered on their shoulders. Although these golden-armored cultivators were not as suffocating as the black-clothed individuals in the Xianming realm, the pressure they exuded was still as profound as the sea, causing everyone present to unconsciously lighten their breathing by a few points. It was a stinging sensation all over just by looking at them, a suffocating feeling, as if they could turn the entire Holy Land to dust with a flick of their hand. Qinglan Holy Land, listen up. The voice of the leading golden-armored cultivator was like thunder. By your highness's decree, we are here to find someone. The sect master timidly looked up. May I ask who the immortal is looking for? This humble one will cooperate fully. The 2 golden-armored cultivators ignored him, exchanging glances instead. One of them took out a jade slip. Are the conditions met? The other scanned the area below for a moment, then took out another jade slip. Qinglan Holy Land, Qingshi Town, should be correct. Is the daughter of the Yin family present? Qiyue trembled all over, looking up in confusion. She had never imagined that such a great figure would come for her. Qiyue, quickly answer. Elder Mo Qingyue urged anxiously, a strange glint in his eyes. Disciple, Qiyue is here. Qiyue slowly rose, her voice slightly trembling from nervousness. Qiyue? We are looking for the daughter of the Yin family. The golden-armored cultivator frowned. Answer yes or no. The Yin family only has me, an only daughter, so it must be me. In her nervousness, Qiyue didn't have time to think much, hastily responding, yes. The golden-armored cultivator's gaze was like lightning, sweeping over her, and he nodded slightly. Where is Elder Mo Qingyue? Elder Mo Qingyue's face lit up with joy, and he quickly stepped forward. This humble one is here. May I ask the immortal? Bang! With a muffled thud, Elder Mo Qingyue's body suddenly exploded, flesh and blood flying everywhere. The entire scene was silent. Qiyue's eyes widened, standing frozen in place. Her master, who was as powerful as a god in her eyes, the nightmare that kept her awake at night, just died like that. In an instant, he turned into minced meat, without even leaving a last word. Your Highness has decreed to kill Elder Mo Qingyue. The golden-armored cultivator withdrew his palm, his tone as flat as if he had just swat a mosquito. Mission accomplished. After speaking, the few of them intended to leave. Wait, Qiyue suddenly called out, her voice sharp with excitement. Who? Who is at your Highness? Why did he save me? Save you? A scoff immediately sounded. You're just a lower realm ant. Don't flatter yourself. Today's events have your Highness's own intentions. The golden-armored cultivator said, turning to glance at her. As for who your Highness is, you don't need to know. He paused, his tone carrying a condescending pity. You only need to know that he is a great figure you wouldn't be able to reach even if you cultivated for 100, 1,000, 10,000 lifetimes. Golden light flashed, and the 9 figures vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the mess and the stunned Holy Land crowd. Qiyue staggered backward, falling to the ground. She looked at Elder Mo Qingyue's mutilated corpse, feeling as if everything were a dream. The fear that had clung to her like a bone marrow parasite for 3 years. Was it just lifted? That your highness, she murmured to herself, a storm raging in her heart. What kind of existence is he? The sect master and others finally came to their senses, gathering around her. Che, when did you get to know such a great figure? Why did these masters kill Elder Imo? Did Elder Imo cause some trouble? What exactly is your identity? The various questions around her were noisy, but Inchiue paid them no mind. She looked up at the sky. The cloud she used to see suddenly transformed into an endless firmament. The sky was so vast, it stretched beyond sight. Then, an unprecedented bold thought took root in her heart. She wanted to meet this mysterious master and personally thank him. Chapter 22. Whose young phoenix is hiding under the eaves? One day his clear voice will shake the sky. Task complete. Simulation count +1. Origin +100. Current origin, 11.65 times. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye, and Qin Wanchuan was 7 years old this year. With the Qin family's power, even completing something seemingly impossible, like finding a needle in a haystack, only took a few months. Of course, this was thanks to the collateral branches and subsidiaries across various realms and regions. As for the heavenly fortune creation fruit, it had long since been brought back to the Qin family. It's just that he had been cultivating his Gu Qin skills during this period, so he temporarily put it aside. Qin Wanchuan's fingertips lightly plucked the strings. The Gu Qin's melody was lingering, like a clear spring flowing, and like a mountain breeze caressing a bamboo forest, carrying an ineffable rhythm. Though Gu Qin skills are minor, they can also evolve into the Grand Dao, he murmured softly, then stopped playing and looked up at Yi Jianwei. Let's stop here for today. Yi Jianwei was slightly stunned, then respectfully put down the Gu Qin score in her hand, a hint of admiration flashing in her eyes. Young master's progress in Gu Qin skills is truly astonishing. Qin Wanchuan chuckled at her words, but did not say much more. With an 11-fold comprehension ability bonus, it was no joke. Seeing that he didn't respond, Yi Jianwei pursed her lips, deliberated for a moment, and then said, This 9 heavens guiding phoenix melody, I have studied it for a year and still haven't grasped even 30% of its true meaning. Yet, young master only listened to me play it once, and has already captured its essence, even playing it better than I can. She paused, a complex emotion surfacing in her heart. Young master's extraordinary comprehension ability can no longer be described by the word genius. Having been in the Qin family for so long, she had already learned Qin Wanchuan's full identity. 9th young master Qin. Before, she had found it familiar, but then she realized with a start. That's right, it was the Qin family, one of the 10 great emperor clans. And although her young master was only the youngest young master in the Qin family, he was also the most heaven-defying great figure. Born with the nourishment of the supreme bone and immortal bone, he awakened the eternal life, immortal body, and would surely achieve immortal ascension in the future. Breakthroughs and dreams were already commonplace. First, he foresaw and eliminated traitors within the clan. Later, he awakened the supreme Dao heart. He was hailed as the youngest four-realm cultivator in history. And that heaven-defying comprehension ability. All of this caused her pressure to skyrocket. To avoid shaming her master, she had no choice but to cultivate desperately. 2 years passed. Although she fortunately entered the 2nd realm in a short time, and had already touched the threshold of the 3rd realm, but she was still far from her young master. A sense of inferiority always lingered over her. Relax. I don't know about others. Qin Wanchuan's fingers brushed over the Gu Qin strings, his gaze falling on Yi Jianwei's tense shoulders, his lips curving slightly, his eyes suddenly becoming profound. But you, Yi Jianwei. The young master looked up. One day, you will become a top-tier powerhouse renowned throughout the 3,000 Dao provinces. This, I'm more certain of than anyone. After all, in the simulation, she was already an emperor, and coming to the Qin family, her potential could only be higher. Yi Jianwei's empty eyes trembled slightly. Her pale fingers unconsciously clutched her plain white skirt. Although she couldn't see, she could clearly feel the gaze on her, without the slightest hint of mockery or jest, serious and gentle, like the melting snow in early spring sunshine. Young master, she called out unconsciously, her ear tips instantly flushing crimson, a burning sensation spreading from her cheeks to her neck, even her toes involuntarily curling up. She didn't need to guess to know her face was as red as a monkey's bottom. The young girl, with her delicate heart, didn't want her master to see her in such a shameful state, so she immediately knelt down. Your servant. Yi Jianwei pressed her forehead against the cold floor tiles, her loose hair no longer as withered and yellow as before, her voice trembling as she spoke. Will certainly not fail young master's expectations. She had clearly sworn never to cry again after her mother's death. Yet at this moment, a single gaze made her heart ache with warmth. Her unseen eyes were already moist, and tears streamed down uncontrollably. Even though she was a servant, and they were almost the same age, the young master had always cared for her and trusted her like an older brother. Yi Jianwei secretly vowed in her heart, "For young master, I have no regrets even if I die." He went to the cultivation room. With a flip of Qin Wangchuan's hand, a fruit, golden yellow throughout, and with a swirling chaos halo on its surface, appeared in his palm. It was precisely the heavenly fortune creation fruit. In the Tao of cultivation, comprehension ability is important, but opportunity is also indispensable. He gazed at the fruit, a profound glint in his eyes. Ordinarily, the heavenly fortune creation fruit cannot bring about an increase in cultivation. But that is for ordinary people. I possess the immortal bone and the supreme Tao heart. Perhaps I can break through with this. With that, he unhesitatingly put the heavenly fortune creation fruit into his mouth. Boom! In an instant, a vast power, like a galaxy, erupted within him. Qin Wangchuan felt his divine soul shake, and the scene before his eyes suddenly changed. He seemed to be in the boundless void realm, with stars flowing all around, looking down. The Tao laws intertwined into a net, covering the entire world. And in this vast world, interwoven with Tao, there were several shining points of light. Their mere existence disrupted the surrounding Tao, causing it to converge towards them, forming special points of light. A profound and mysterious sensation surged in his heart. Qin Wangchuan even felt that at this moment. He was omnipotent. It was a powerful feeling that one could easily get lost in and be unable to extricate oneself. I am heaven. As these words fell, time seemed to stand still. The heavenly fortune creation fruit not only contained the luck of heaven and earth, but also allowed him to briefly touch another level. He touched the heaven above heaven, saw the Tao laws, and also witnessed the flow of luck, as well as the children of luck entangled with luck. So that's how it is, he murmured softly, not indulging in the feeling of omnipotence and control over everything, but returning to himself, carefully sensing the surging power of luck within his body. At this moment, Qin Wangchuan's body was surrounded by luck like a dragon, continuously entwined, as if every gesture could stir the great forces of heaven and earth. OM! The spiritual sea within him surged. The supreme Tao heart beat violently, and an unprecedented power surged endlessly through his meridians. Crack! A certain restriction within his body was instantly broken through. His aura suddenly soared, and chaos immortal light shot up into the sky, condensing into a blurry shadow behind him. His heart pounded like a war drum. With each beat, the spiritual sea within him surged and expanded twofold. Spiritual qi poured in like a tidal wave, sweeping through his meridians. 10 heartbeats, 10 transformations. The spiritual platform suddenly expanded tenfold amidst the roar. Like the vast starry sky suddenly expanding, endless spiritual qi turned into a vortex, madly pouring into this reborn body. Fifth realm, spiritual sea realm, achieved. Qin Wangchuan slowly opened his eyes, looking up at the sky, his gaze seemingly piercing through the boundless void realm. He sensed the direction of the person with great luck. It seems that in this world, there really are so-called protagonists. The scene of spiritual qi surging wildly in Wangchuan Pavilion was naturally seen by others. Look, ninth young master has broken through again, a disciple exclaimed, pointing at the chaos light pillar shooting up into the sky. Within the light pillar, thousands of Tao patterns flowed, and the aura of the newly breakthrough fifth realm had not yet been fully contained. Fifth realm. It's only been 2 years. Even Qin Wenhe, the imperial tutor, was astonished watching this scene, a 7-year-old spiritual sea realm cultivator. It was simply too heaven-defying. The disciples who were sparring on the training ground all stopped. Someone looked at the faintly visible emperor's shadow and suddenly began to slap himself repeatedly. I only break through to the fifth realm at 20. If outsiders knew that ninth young master's eternal life immortal body not only didn't slow down his cultivation speed, but even soared. His companion beside him replied blankly, already imagining that scene. Deep within the Forbidden Land, a black piece hovered above the chessboard. Qin Taiyi's hand, holding a piece, paused slightly, his sharp eyes reflecting the chaos immortal light that pierced through the restriction. Across the chessboard, would ancestors' fingertips' tender bud silently unfurled, branching out in the halo. The heavenly fortune creation fruit, the old ancestor suddenly chuckled, to find such a treasure that disappeared for 10,000 years. With that, a piece fell and space rippled. But even so, to break through to the fifth realm at 7 years old. Unprecedented and never to be surpassed. Am I underestimating him too much? Wood Ancestor's branch also picked up a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard without a sound. The opposite of you. I already held him in high regard, but I didn't expect him to still exceed expectations. Before he finished speaking, both of them chuckled at the same time. Under whose eaves hides a young phoenix, whose clear cry will one day shake the 9 heavens. Chapter 23, When You Think You Are the Final Boss. Another 2 years passed in a flash. This year, Qin Wangchuan was 9 years old. In the blink of an eye, it was time for him to descend to the lower realm. Upper Thousand Provinces, Xianming Realm. Outside, the heaven-linking pagoda. A major event was unfolding at this very moment. Skull Demon Lord, in order to refine the Myriad Soul Banner, had slaughtered 88 cultivator cities in this realm, turning billions of living beings into vengeful souls. This provoked 72 powerful experts, including the Zixiao sect, Xianjian Gate, and Qinglian Holy Land, to join forces in a siege, vowing to eliminate the Devil Head and uphold the righteous path. Skull Demon Lord was no match and attempted to escape to another realm through the heaven-linking pagoda. However, everyone had already been ambushing him there for a long time. A great battle was on the verge of breaking out. Devil Head, today is your day of death, the sect master of Zixiao sect roared, as a 100-jong lightning dragon formed from 9 heavens divine lightning crashed down. Skull Demon Lord sneered, and with a flick of his Myriad Soul Banner, he actually swallowed the lightning dragon whole. Is that all you've got? Seeing this, 7 sword cultivators from Xianjian Gate immediately formed the Big Dipper sword formation, and 7 natal flying swords transformed into streaks of light, slashing towards him. The demonic lord neither dodged nor avoided, allowing the sword edges to pierce his body, but from the wounds, countless vengeful spirits surged out, instantly polluting the flying swords and causing them to fall to the ground. How is this possible? The sword cultivators were aghast. The 3 grand elders of Qinglian Holy Land exchanged glances, gritted their teeth, and unleashed their sect's ultimate treasure, the world-purifying green lotus. Sacred light shone for 1,000 li, attempting to purify the devilish qi. Futile. Skull Demon Lord opened his mouth and spewed out his natal demonic blood. The green lotus was instantly dyed red, and billions of vengeful souls clung to it, corrupting this saint-grade sacred artifact, a legacy of 10,000 years, into scrap metal. You thought you ambushed me, but in reality, all of this was my plan. Otherwise, how could I have gathered all of you in this place? It's time to end this. The demonic lord formed a hand seal, and the grand formation, prepared long ago, activated at this moment. The Myriad Soul Banner surged, and the sky-obscuring resentful qi formed a massive vortex. The magic treasures of the 72 powerful experts exploded one after another, their primordial spirits forcibly torn from their bodies and swallowed by the banner amidst their horrific screams. As the last cultivator's body crashed to the ground, Skull Demon Lord stepped on the shattered head of the Zixiao sect master, and the vengeful souls on the Myriad Soul Banner let out a triumphant shriek. No, impossible. The Zixiao sect master's fragmented primordial spirits struggled within the banner. My Zixiao sect, a legacy of 30,000 years. How could it? Skull Demon Lord grinned menacingly and formed a hand seal. 30,000 years? After today, the Zixiao sect will just be a lightning pattern on my banner. Devil Head. The sword soul of Xianjian Gate's Grand Elder let out a final clang. My Xianjian Gate disciples will surely avenge us. Avenge? The old devil crushed the sword soul with one hand, sneering, Don't rush. Once this lord refines all of you from Xianjian Gate, upper and lower, you can reunite in the banner. The last Grand Elder of Qinglian Holy Land's pure qi was about to dissipate, yet he still shouted sharply, Old devil, do you know that my Qinglian ancestral master has already ascended to the heavens? What does his ascension have to do with you? The old devil opened his mouth and inhaled, swallowing that wisp of pure qi into his belly, then sneered. Do you think bringing up an ascended ancestral master can scare this lord? He doesn't need to come. I will go find him myself in the future. The battlefield suddenly fell silent. Only the Myriad Soul Banner fluttered, and the 72 newly acquired saint souls roamed on the banner, each twisted face frozen in the despair and unwillingness of their last moments before falling. Skull Demon Lord took a deep breath, the rich smell of blood and soul power making him close his eyes in intoxication. Now this is more like it. He laughed wildly at the sky. Ha ha ha! What righteous path sects? What acting on behalf of heaven? You fools, do you really think numbers can win? Skull Demon Lord stood on 72 corpses, his Myriad Soul Banner fluttering, and billions of vengeful souls on the banner wailed mournfully. This lord's Tao is proven through slaughter. and today I finally become a great emperor. He raised his hand and, from a distance, seized the last surviving female cultivator of the Zixiao sect. The female cultivator's white robe was soaked in blood, her black hair disheveled, yet it could not hide her exquisitely beautiful and ethereal face. A cinnabar mark on her brow shimmered, the symbol of a direct disciple of the Zixiao sect. You besieged this lord for 7 days. Did you ever consider that you were coming to your deaths? Though her face was pale, the woman defiantly held her head high. Devil head, my master will surely. Before she could finish, black chi surged into her palm. I told you if you're going to call for someone closer. You're already dead. So what's the point of revenge? Her delicate body trembled violently. Her jade-like skin shriveled and withered at a visible rate, and her autumn water-like eyes rapidly dimmed. In her last horrific scream, her divine soul was forcibly torn out, transforming into a white light that merged into the myriad soul banner. The old devil licked his lips, looking at the female corpse, now just a shriveled husk in his hand, and sneered. A fairy of the Zixiao sect? Just another lost soul on my banner. 26,000 years of arduous cultivation, slaughtering countless sects. Today, I finally become invincible in this realm. Skull Demon Lord laughed wildly at the sky. The myriad soul banner's blood lights surged, dyeing the entire sky dark red. Once this lord refines these 72 saint souls, it will be time to ascend to the 10 directions immortal court. He looked down at the battlefield below, where rivers of blood flowed. Those once renowned righteous path powerful experts had now become his stepping stones to advancement. Righteous and evil, good and bad, this world only recognizes strength. The powerful ones were dead, and some juniors hid in the distance, thinking they were well hidden. Just as he was about to pursue and annihilate those who had slipped through, suddenly, Skull Demon Lord's body stiffened, and the blood-red light in his eyes surged. He felt the demonic chi within him surge wildly, and the billions of vengeful souls in the myriad soul banner shrieked in unison, actively feeding him pure soul power. This is a breakthrough. The world suddenly changed color, and rolling demonic clouds gathered from all directions. The spiritual chi within a 10,000 li radius frantically poured into his body, and every inch of his flesh and blood was undergoing astonishing transformation. Ha ha! Heaven helps me! The old devil laughed with wild joy. Today this lord shall prove his Tao and become emperor. No, I am the emperor. He suddenly spread his arms, and the myriad soul banner surged, transforming into a blood-red sky curtain that covered the heavens. The 72 newly acquired saint souls struggled painfully within the banner, being forcibly refined into the purest origin power. With billions of living beings as sacrifice, with 72 saint souls as the guide, Skull Demon Lord's body was engulfed in monstrous demonic flames, and his aura continuously soared. The void realm began to twist and crack, and dark emperor runes appeared on his body. The lightning tribulation was gathering above his head. As long as he endured 99 bolts of lightning tribulation, he could become emperor. For ordinary people, the lightning tribulation was terrifying, but in Skull Demon Lord's eyes, it was incredibly simple. He didn't need to resist it directly. He could just use the souls in the myriad soul banner to bear it for him. This was an unconventional path to proving his Tao as emperor. Though certainly not as powerful as other great emperors, it had the advantage of being stable. Skull Demon Lord had already begun to celebrate prematurely. Today, this lord proves his Tao as emperor. As he spoke, he looked towards the distant sky, his gaze seemingly piercing through the clouds, through the realm barrier, and seeing another world. This realm is too small. It is unworthy of this emperor. With my great emperor cultivation, even in the heavens above, I shall have a place. With that, he formed a hand seal, and the myriad soul banner surged, growing to 1,000 zhong in size, preparing to face the tribulation. However, at this very moment, boom, the heaven-linking pagoda suddenly began to operate. Someone had arrived in this world. Encountering this emperor, you can only say your luck is bad. Die for me. Skull Demon Lord struck out with a palm, filled with murderous intent. The next moment, 9 heaven-rending hounds trampled through the void realm, each step causing the stars of the heavens to tremble. Their bodies were covered in chaos profound armor, and when their 6 wings spread, they stirred up world-ending gale winds, with scorching flames flickering in their blood moon-like beast eyes. The carriage was entirely composed of black and gold, with profound black as the base and gilded patterns, and the body of the carriage was naturally inscribed with Tao patterns. Most striking were the gold-on-black chain characters on both sides of the carriage compartment. Each stroke seemed to contain the supreme Tao rhyme that suppressed all heavens, and merely looking at it made one's divine soul tremble. A glazed palace lantern hung high on the roof of the carriage, and the primordial bells, suspended from its four corners, lightly chimed. Each time the bell rang, a million li of space-time solidified. 100 black, profound armor divine generals stood solemnly on either side, like ancient, everlasting divine statues. Their auras were completely restrained. Had one not seen them with their own eyes, one would not have detected their existence in the slightest. When divine sense probed them, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, leaving no trace. Compared to the ostentatious display of outward aura, these people in front of him undoubtedly had a despair-inducing difference in strength from himself. By the time Skull Demon Lord realized this, it was already too late to withdraw his hand. His demonic palm, capable of instantly killing a Heaven Saint-grade expert, wrapped in monstrous devilish chi, had already heavily slammed towards the carriage. However, this world-destroying strike mysteriously stagnated after flying 100 zhong, as if it had hit an invisible barrier. The devilish chi began to dissipate, and the bloody hand gradually melted, disintegrating naturally like ice meeting a scorching sun. The entire process was utterly silent, yet made Skull Demon Lord's hair stand on end. How is this possible? His pupils contracted violently, and only one thought screamed frantically in his mind. Escape. Run. Chapter 24. There are always more powerful people appearing. His body trembled uncontrollably, and Skull Demon Lord's mind had only one thought: escape. However, before he could make any move, this demonic Lord Giant, who had been so arrogant just moments ago, found himself unable to move. Is it a magic treasure, or is it my own fear? In a single breath, countless thoughts surged through Skull Demon Lord's mind. The next moment, his thoughts suddenly broke off, because he clearly felt a terrifying chi that transcended all heavens had locked onto him. Next to the carriage, an unremarkable old man turned his head and glanced over. He was not like the Xuanjia guards, but a true Dao protector assigned by the old ancestor. How dare you? There were no lengthy speeches, no exchange of names. The old man merely flicked his finger. Skull Demon Lord's astonished expression had not yet faded when his demonic lord body, carrying a terrifying aura, disintegrated inch by inch like ancient, decaying wood. The myriad soul banner, which had devoured billions of lives, its 72 sacred souls on the banner face, had no time to wail before they silently vanished into ash, as if they had never existed. Even with the supreme treasure in hand, he still had no chance to scream or struggle. He died without any power to resist, just like the ants he had once crushed. Skull Demon Lord's primordial spirit struggled frantically at the last moment, trying to escape, but was firmly imprisoned by some invisible force, only able to watch his demonic lord body turn into flying ash and his soul fire extinguish inch by inch. Just one step, and I could have reached the peak. No, this emperor has not yet. Dream. However, even this last thought could not fully emerge before it was completely annihilated by the indifferent glance of the nine-headed Rift Sky Ho. Skull Demon Lord, who had once slaughtered billions and dominated a realm, thus silently turned to ashes. Not even dust remained. Inside the carriage, Qin Wangchuan didn't even lift an eyelid, merely asking indifferently, "What is it?" Reporting to young master, "A quasi-emperor blocked the way just now, but it has been resolved," the old man respectfully replied. "We have now arrived at Xianming realm." Upon closer inspection, there was more than one such heaven-defying old man. On the surface, there were at least 10. This was no longer a young master descending to the lower realm. It was a crown prince on an excursion. Qin Wangchuan tapped his finger lightly on the window frame, his gaze sweeping over the sea of blood created by the demonic lore below, and said indifferently, "A very strong smell of blood." As soon as his voice fell, a Xuanjia guard waved his hand, and a gentle breeze blew, causing the corpses and bloodstains to instantly disappear. "Perhaps some conflict occurred in this realm," the old man responded. Qin Wangchuan stepped out of the carriage, his 9-year-old figure already showing extraordinary presence. He wore a dark black brocade robe, with ancient Qin family Dao patterns embroidered in dark gold thread on the collar and cuffs. As he walked, his robe moved slightly, as if stars were flowing. His face was carved from white jade, his features clear and handsome, his lips thin as blades, pursed with an age-defying sternness, yet a youthful agility flashed in his eyes when he looked up. Though his body had not yet fully matured, his every gesture already carried the momentum of a dragon walking and a tiger striding. It is worth mentioning that Yi Jianwei was not accompanying him. She had been invited, but she said she needed to seize every moment to cultivate. Look how diligent the future heavenly emperor is. So this time, only Qin Wangchuan descended to the lower realm. He glanced at the spot where Skull Demon Lord had died and whispered, "A strong one." The old man beside him paused at his words. Strong? A half-step great emperor, seemingly very strong. But in reality, at most, he was just a quasi-emperor. As long as one has not achieved the emperor realm, one is an ant. There was no chance to resist at all. Even if one successfully achieved the emperor realm and transcended the world, there was still a heavenly emperor above, suppressing them, unable to cause any significant stir. They merely changed from ants that could be dealt with casually to monkeys that required some effort. After thinking for a moment, the old man still flattered, "He is indeed very strong, but this kind of strength." The old man was interrupted by Qin Wangchuan before he could finish his sentence. "I wasn't talking about him." Qin Wangchuan suddenly turned, his gaze piercing through the void realm, landing on a seemingly empty cloud 100 zhang away. "Since you are waiting for me here, why not show yourself? If not him, then who?" Everyone's hearts trembled, and their gazes unconsciously followed the direction Qin Wangchuan turned. The clouds parted, and several figures stood in the air. At the forefront was a cold and aloof female figure. The woman was about 15 or 16 years old, dressed in a blue phoenix flowing cloud skirt that swayed gently in the wind, with a green jade belt cinched at her waist, accentuating her tall and slender figure. Her ink-black hair was loosely tied with a simple silver hairpin, with a few wisps falling beside her porcelain-white cheeks, adding a touch of coldness and aloofness. What was most captivating were her eyes. Her pupils were light as colored glaze, but the corners of her eyes subtly upturned, naturally carrying a three-tenths chill even when not smiling. At this moment, she looked down, her long lashes casting a faint shadow beneath her eyes, making her appear as if carved from 9 heavens black ice, exuding an inviolable chill. "This Qin Wangchuan frowned slightly, his gaze lingering on the young girl. Although it was his first time seeing her, the chi on her body felt inexplicably familiar, as if he had encountered something similar somewhere before. The young girl led the group behind her slowly down. Qin Wangchuan was about to speak, but he saw her suddenly step forward 2 paces, her phoenix eyes widening slightly as she spoke with an appraising look. Her voice trailed off, then she took a more detailed look. "So the Qin family's young master is born so." She paused, seemingly pondering her words. "Handsome." She was very satisfied. "Handsome?" Qin Wangchuan's expression changed slightly, and so did those behind the young girl. To actually hear the words "handsome" from their young miss's mouth? Was this still the aloof Li Qingwan? But no matter what others thought, Li Qingwan subtly raised her sleeve, performed an ancient and solemn greeting, and then, looking at him, curiously asked, "I was indeed waiting for you, but how did you discover me?" Even with an immortal emperor weapon, even an ordinary great emperor should not be able to detect it. Immortal emperor weapon? You carry something like that with you? Several old men gasped at her words, but they didn't pay too much attention. After all, the identity of the person before them. One of the old men transmitted a message to Qin Wangchuan. "Young master, this is Li Qingwan of the Heavenly Sword Leaf family." "So it's the Leaf family." Qin Wangchuan nodded. No wonder it felt familiar. It was a similar chi to that Li Tiendi. After speaking, the old man also briefly introduced some of her deeds. Li Qingwan, the direct daughter of the Li family, was aloof and disliked crowds. Her talent was so exceptional that it was considered rare in a million years. On the day of her birth, 10,000 swords sang in unison above the Leaf family's ancestral land, and 3,000 streaks of sword chi descended from the 9 heavens, transforming into phoenixes that circled the beams for 3 days without dispersing. At the age of 3, while playing in the sword pond, she inadvertently triggered the resonance of an ancestral sword that had been dormant for 10,000 years, its sword chi soaring into the sky and alarming Li Tiendi. At 5, she first began to cultivate the sword Dao, and after 3 days of practice, she caused the sword chi rainbow phenomenon, where the spiritual chi within a 100-mile radius all transformed into sword shapes. At 7, she entered seclusion in the sword tomb, and the 100,000 ancient swords in the sword tomb trembled simultaneously, forming the myriad swords returning to the ancestor spectacle. In the same year, she achieved a breakthrough to the 4th realm. 9 innate sword chi descended from the 9 heavens, transforming into a sword lotus that held her aloft for 100 days. Li Tiendi once personally declared that this girl was the reincarnation of a sword Dao immortal, destined to walk an unprecedented path to the peak of the sword Dao. Don't let her current age of 16 deceive you. Her legend is spread throughout the 10 directions immortal court. A 4th realm at 7. Qin Wangchuan nodded. That talent was indeed very good, but it was still some distance from himself. Spiritual chi. He suddenly spoke, making Li Qingwan momentarily stunned. "What?" Qin Wangchuan repeated. "I said spiritual chi." After speaking, he gave her a deep look. Wasn't she said to be aloof? Why did she seem so naive, looking like she could be easily deceived? Even if one conceals their form and restrains their chi, as long as a cultivator exists, the surrounding spiritual chi will be disturbed. By observing the flow of spiritual chi, it's very easy to discover. Perceive the flow of spiritual chi? If so, wouldn't it be possible to ignore all hidden cultivation techniques and divine abilities? Li Qingluan's pupils suddenly constricted, and for the first time, her usually cold and aloof face showed a look of shock. Is that even possible? Even with her realm of a clear sword heart, she had never heard of anyone being able to control the flow of spiritual chi. It was as difficult as a common person finding a grain of white sugar in a snowstorm. This required an almost abnormal perception of heaven and earth spiritual chi. Young master can actually, let alone others, even their own old men were greatly alarmed. This was the first time they had heard of such a thing. Qin Wangchuan looked back at the crowd behind him and asked in confusion, "Is it difficult?" This was an ability he gained after consuming the heavenly fortune creation fruit. His perception of spiritual chi had reached an abnormal level. He had originally thought it was useless, but now it seemed, perhaps not. This is no longer a matter of whether it's difficult or not. Young master, you are going against heaven, the old man who had just made a move murmured to himself. Now he understood why the heavenly emperor old ancestor had assigned several people to protect his Tao. Such a heaven-defying figure must never perish prematurely. Li Qingluan took a deep breath, suppressing the shock in her heart, and lightly raised her jade hand, sword intent flowing at her fingertips. This is not the place to talk. Her voice was still cold. Follow me. Before her voice faded, a 10,000 jong crack suddenly tore open in the sky. Boom! A colossal ship, entirely cast from green jade, broke through the void realm, with a phoenix divine bird carving on its bow, poised to fly, its wings spanning 1,000 jong, each feather flowing with sharp sword intent. The ship's body was inscribed with ancient Li family Tao patterns, gleaming with a chilling sharpness under the sunlight, as if the entire colossal ship was a peerless divine sword drawn from its scabbard. Qin Wangchuan had never seen such a large flying ship, but the several Tao protectors behind him were well-traveled and knowledgeable. This is the Li family's heavenly sword-flying ship, the old man introduced. Legend has it that this ship was forged by the Li family's progenitor from 9 heavens black jade, tempered with supreme sword intent for 10,000 years, and when it appears, it can cleave the sun and moon. After speaking, he also transmitted a message. Since they have brought out such a flying ship, they either highly regard you, young master, or they have something to ask of you. Li Qingluan's robes fluttered, and she lightly stepped onto the wing of the phoenix statue on the ship's bow. She looked back at Qin Wangchuan, her hair flying in the wind, with an endless sea of clouds behind her and the colossal ship that seemed to pierce the sky. Please. Chapter 25. Cultivate, what a wonderful word. Wait, I am the one being cultivated? The moment the sky sword-flying ship broke through the air, in the ruins on the edge below, several blood-soaked survivors finally dared to raise their heads. Only a patch of bloody ashes drifted down from the horizon. That was the only trace of Skull Demon Lord's existence. Is it over? A young cultivator, covered in blood, stumbled out of the ruins. His Taoist robe was already soaked through, and his left arm was twisted unnaturally, an injury left half an hour ago when Skull Demon Lord casually swept a wave of devilish chi. He stared blankly at the empty space. It should have been piled with corpses. His senior brother, the honest man who always liked to ruffle his head, had just stood there, holding his natal magical artifact, trying to protect his junior brothers and junior sisters behind him. But now, not even ashes remained. No, it shouldn't be like this. The cultivator's lips trembled, his voice hoarse and unrecognizable. He staggered 2 steps forward, then suddenly fell to his knees, his fingers digging deeply into the soil. At least there should be a complete body. At least, he should be able to bring his senior brother's remains back to the sect. But now nothing was left, as if an invisible giant hand had gently wiped away all traces of existence. Is that devil head dead? Another severely injured cultivator asked with a trembling, hoarse voice. He looked at the gradually dissipating devilish chi in the sky, still unable to believe that he had survived. The spirited arrogance when besieging the devil head. The astonishment when falling into the trap. The terror of his sect members dying tragically in an instant. And the fear of the devil head about to break through. Everything happened in an instant, and ended in an instant. Not far away, a white-haired old woman, clutching a broken magical artifact, stared blankly at the sky. She didn't know who had made the move, nor where that carriage and flying ship came from. But the pressure that transcended heaven and earth made her instinctively prostrate herself, not daring to look up. It's a great figure from the upper realm, she murmured, her voice trembling. "It must be a great figure from the upper realm." And on a cliff further away, several young cultivators slumped to the ground. One of them stared intently at the sky, muttering, "That devil head, just like that, gone." He didn't even have a chance to resist. Another's voice trembled. What realm is the person who made the move? They didn't know who was sitting in that carriage, nor which power that massive ship, which had broken through the air, belonged to. They only knew they had survived. And all of this was not because they were intentionally rescued. It was merely because those mysterious existences happened to pass by this place. Heaven above heaven. One of them whispered, his gaze unconsciously drawn to the sky, an unprecedented longing appearing in his eyes. What kind of place is that? Since childhood, they had known that the Xianming realm they lived in belonged to the upper 1,000 provinces of the 3,000 Dao provinces. Below were the middle 1,000 province and the lower 1,000 provinces. Compared to the lower realm, it was already a very good place. At the same time, they also knew that above the upper 1,000 provinces, there was an even vaster world. But they had never imagined it would be so terrifying. A half-step great emperor. That was a peerless devil head capable of easily destroying a realm. Yet in front of that mysterious existence, he didn't even have a chance to struggle before being casually wiped out. I heard that people from the upper realm are born standing at a height that we can never reach in our entire lives. Another said, his voice dry, both awestruck and bitter. The cultivation technique they cultivate, the spiritual chi they breathe. I even heard they don't use spirit stones, but something even more powerful far exceeding this realm. Does that mean someone swallowed, his voice trembling, that the supremes, holy lords, and quasi-emperors who are unapproachable in our eyes might just be ordinary cultivators in the upper realm? Everyone fell silent. In fact, there was another truth everyone knew but dared not speak. Since a half-step great emperor was not even considered an ant in the eyes of the upper realm's great powers, then would an unsurpassed great emperor, in the eyes of those from heaven above heaven, also be? This thought was too shocking, so much so that they didn't even dare to ponder it deeply. If that were truly the case, then what were they, these lower realm cultivators, struggling so hard to seek the Tao, considered? Ants? Dust? Or even less than dust? The cultivator who spoke first suddenly gave a bitter laugh. We don't even have the right to be looked at directly by them. Everyone fell silent again, looking at the sky that had long returned to peace, their hearts filled with both awe and an indescribable complex emotion. Longing? Fear? Unwillingness? Perhaps all of them. But no matter what they had seen today had completely subverted their understanding. Would they reorganize their feelings and turn what they had seen, heard, and felt today into stepping stones on their cultivation path? Or would they be completely crushed by this, their Tao heart shattered? It was up to them. On the deck of the flying ship, a sea of clouds surged beneath their feet. My grandfather told you I would come to the Xianming realm. So he asked you to protect me? Qin Wanchuan stroked his chin thoughtfully. But it didn't make sense. The Qin family had many experts, so why would they ask an outsider to protect him? There was a conspiracy. As he was pondering, a sudden weight settled on his shoulder. A snow-white cloak embroidered with a subtle azure phoenix pattern was gently draped over his shoulder. He looked up and met Li Qingwan's face. Her slender eyelashes trembled slightly, but her porcelain-white earlobes visibly flushed crimson. The flying ship is too fast. The wind is strong, Li Qingwan explained stiffly, yet her fingertips casually reached up to help him straighten his collar. At the other end of the deck, several Li family elders exchanged smiles, a knowing glint in their eyes. It's a sure thing. It seems this marriage arranged by the old ancestor is even more suitable than imagined. That's right, a marriage. Regarding Qin Wanchuan's marriage, Li Qingwan of the Li family currently had the loudest call. Her status matched, and her talent far surpassed others. It was just that Li Qingwan was not only aloof but also possessed the same temper as all sword cultivators in the world. Stubborn, arrogant. If she wasn't satisfied, even if the heavenly emperor himself arrived, there were only 4 words. Preferred death to surrender. But now it seemed, the eldest gray-robed elder stroked his beard, revealing a mysterious smile, not even noticing the tea overflowing. In all these years, when had he ever seen this ice queen actively care for others? It seems young Miss has also reached that age. Suddenly, a joking remark made the younger elder with the sword beside him cough violently, frantically winking at his companions, hidden by his sleeve. The sword attendants on the other side were shaking their shoulders, trying to suppress their laughter. Don't laugh, you idiots. Laughing now could mean death. After all, no one had expected it. The young miss, who usually found even speaking an extra half-sentence annoying, was now acting like a clumsy new bride. She was even covering her future husband with his clothes. How precious. Li Qingwan obviously noticed the commotion behind her. She tensed her jaw, and a sword chi suddenly swept across the deck, interrupting everyone's conversation. Only her reddened ear tips completely betrayed her inner feelings. Absurd. Li Qingwan inwardly chided, but she didn't know if she was referring to the gossiping clan members or her own inexplicable actions just now. Before leaving, she had sworn to the old ancestor, "If that Qin Wanchuan is merely an empty name, don't blame me for severing this engagement on the spot." But at this moment, she slightly turned her head, her gaze possessively looking at the young man beside her. He has a handsome appearance, monstrous talent, and his personality seems not bad either. It's just that he's too young, still a bit childish. At least 7 or 8 years, Li Qingwan calculated in her mind, and when her gaze swept over the young man's still slender shoulders, a rare patience emerged. By then, as this thought arose, the spiritual qi in her spiritual platform suddenly surged. Only then did she realize that she was actually seriously considering the absurd idea of raising a Tao companion. Wait, is it absurd? Li Qingwan suddenly reacted, then asked herself. In a cultivation world, most Tao companions are formed for the purpose of cultivation or family, with little emotion. But if one were to raise him from a young age, once this thought arose, it lingered, truly terrifying. Even more terrifying was that when she imagined the scene of the young man standing beside her as an adult, her usually cold Tao heart actually felt a hint of anticipation. Qin Wanchuan was unaware of the dangerous thoughts in the mind of the person beside him. He only felt the atmosphere was subtle. Although Li Qingwan's expression was cold, her subtle gaze always clung to him, like a spider's silk, difficult to break free from. Her actions also exuded thoughtfulness everywhere. First, the cloak, then food, and finally, she even personally peeled a spirit fruit and offered it to him. No, 9/10 of it was wrong. Chapter 26, his comprehension has always been amazing. If one ignored her peculiar attitude, the journey itself was actually quite normal. It was just that their conversation was clearly on different wavelengths. She kept asking Qin Wanchuan about his preferences. Meanwhile, Qin Wanchuan's focus was on the Leaf family sword seal. The sword seal is the foundation of the Leaf family, although she said that it wasn't actually a top secret that couldn't be revealed at all. But before that, Qin Wanchuan first spoke of his comprehension ability. Though I don't know the specific characters in your Leaf family's 7-kill sword seal. Qin Wanchuan looked at the faintly discernible mountains in the sea of clouds, then suddenly turned his head. But I guess there must be the 2 characters destroy and open within it. Unbeknownst to them, the distance between the 2, who had originally been sitting opposite each other, was now so close that they could count each other's eyelashes. At first, they sat opposite each other. Then, at some point, she sat beside him. Li Qingwan's sleeve even pressed against his hem, and the faint scent of a maiden mixed with the cold fragrance of winter plum lingered at his nose. Oh! She suddenly leaned closer, her hair brushing against Qin Wanchuan's hand. How can you tell? Sword intent doesn't lie. Qin Wanchuan subtly leaned back half an inch. I've seen someone use the sword seal. It wasn't merely destruction, but a great Tao of first destroying, then creating. Li Qingwan just watched Qin Wanchuan's profile. At this distance, she could clearly see the profound gaze reflected in his eyes, and smell the scent of cedar coming from the young man. When she came back to her senses, her heart was filled with shock. She had seen countless sword cultivators try to comprehend the 7-kill sword seal. Some cultivated for 100 years and still couldn't grasp its method, while others spent their entire lives trapped by the superficiality of the sword manual. Yet, no one had ever, with just one glance, pointed directly to its true Tao meaning. You've only seen it once, you couldn't possibly. Before she finished speaking, she paused, startled. What was impossible? Sword cultivators value karma, destiny/affinity, the most, and the person before her seemed to be born for the sword. Thinking of this, her eyes narrowed, and her natal flying sword, Qin Feng, suddenly unsheathed. There are indeed the characters destroy and open, but these 2 characters are not any single seal within the 7-kill seal. The profoundness of the 7-kill seal lies in the fact that it is actually composed of different characters superimposed. For example, she said, and as her sword tip danced, 4 characters slowly appeared and superimposed on each other. Slice, destroy, open, heaven. The Tao rhythm of these 4 characters combined is the complete first seal. In other words, 4 characters make one sword. Of course, if others use it, it might not be just 4 characters. One sword. This time it was Qin Wanchuan's turn to be surprised, and he pressed, "Are you saying the sword seal is actually freely composed of many characters? And that the sword seal each person uses is actually different?" Li Qingwan nodded. Precisely. So that's how it is. Qin Wanchuan murmured, his gaze passing over her and landing in the distance, as if penetrating mountains, rivers, and a sea of clouds to see something. He suddenly smiled. a smile like a sword unsheathing, sharp and bright. I understand. Li Qingwan raised an eyebrow. Understand what? This way it makes sense. Even the most perfect cultivation technique is dead. It cannot be revered as a sacred object. Your Li family sword seal is a living sword art. He used his finger as a sword, mimicking her earlier movements, and began to dance the sword. However, Li Qingwan suddenly snorted coldly. Since we were discussing the Tao of the sword, how can we gesture empty-handed? Qin Wangchuan took the long sword. The blade trembled slightly, emitting a clear phoenix cry. This sword is named Ji, and it has not yet recognized a master. I'll lend it to you for now. She stood with her arms crossed. Lest you say that my Li family sword seal, though profound, lacks tangible proof. The young man flicked his wrist, and the sword's edge traced a perfect crescent arc in the air. The azure gold Tao patterns on the sword's spine suddenly came alive, flowing like a dragon along the blade. Each turn of the sword's momentum precisely replicated Li Qingwan's previous trajectory, yet also held an indescribable rhythm. Slice, destroy, open, heaven. With each character spoken, the sword's momentum grew sharper. After speaking all 4 characters, a pure sword intent had condensed at the sword's tip, lingering in the air for a long time. So that's how it is. Qin Wangchuan sheathed his sword and stood. Whether it's a sword manual or anything else, these characters are merely superficial. The true core is to allow the sword cultivator to combine them with their own Tao. In other words, this is a path to discover oneself. I think the person who pioneered this path originally didn't want future generations to be limited by fixed moves. My body is unrestrained. My Tao is infinite. After speaking, Qin Wangchuan gazed at the Ji suspended before him. As the sword trembled slightly, a faint solitary phoenix phantom flowed out from the sword's edge, and a clear sword cry echoed through the valley. Where the sword's light reached, even the howling mountain wind seemed to freeze. It's a good sword, he said softly, and as his fingertips traced the sword's spine, a wisp of rosy light burst forth from the point of contact, illuminating his smiling eyes. Come to think of it, he wasn't a true sword cultivator, so naturally, he didn't have a sword. The only one he had was the wooden sword gifted by Wood Ancestor. It's about time I found a sword of my own, he thought to himself, and Li Qingwan gazed at the pure sword intent, which remained condensed and unscattered, her fingertips unconsciously tightening on her sleeve. This person before her was undoubtedly a true genius. This sword, if you like it. She suddenly spoke, her voice a few shades lower than usual. It's yours. Qin Wangchuan raised an eyebrow. A sword meets its true master to show its sharpness. Li Qingwan paused, then brushed back a stray strand of hair. Compared to me, it can better unleash its edge in your hands. Qin Wangchuan's fingertips lightly traced the Tao patterns on the sword's spine. Then he suddenly smiled. Since that's the case, I can't just take your sword for free. As he spoke, he took out a crystal-clear jade fruit, with what looked like flowing light beneath its skin. This is a heaven-defying 9 phoenix fruit. It has miraculous beautifying effects. If you don't accept it, he handed the fruit over. I wouldn't dare to take this sword. Li Qingwan hesitated for a moment, but still accepted it. Although she didn't give the sword for this reason, this fruit indeed held immense appeal for women. Who wouldn't want to be more beautiful? In the distance, the faces of the Li family members had already changed dramatically. Several elders' pupils constricted, and the accompanying sword attendants were even more dumbfounded, some even staggering back as if they had witnessed something unbelievable. That G. Isn't that the supreme treasure young miss was preparing to refine? She just gave it away. Someone whispered. The others were also somewhat puzzled. When did young miss become so? Hush, don't speak ill of her. But this is clearly... Everyone's gazes shifted back and forth between the two, eventually turning into a meaningful sigh. Who would have thought that the usually aloof and self-possessed young miss would be so flustered today, practically wanting to hand over all her life's treasures? The two then engaged in another discussion about their predecessor's Tao. As they discussed, the conversation eventually turned to themselves. Interesting. She suddenly flipped her wrist, and the Qing Feng sword drew half an azure rainbow in the air. The hilt lightly but firmly pressed against Qin Wangchuan's Adam's apple. From this angle, she could perfectly see his fair and alluring Adam's apple and neck. Then what is your Tao? The sword's edge reflected the sunlight, illuminating both their faces brightly. The guards on both sides immediately tensed up. Qin Wangchuan's pupils dilated slightly, as if this question had pierced through some long-standing mist. He looked down at the long sword in his hand, murmuring softly, "My Tao." His voice was so light it almost scattered in the wind. Even Qin Wangchuan himself felt it was unfamiliar. This question he couldn't answer. "Young master." The old servant's voice suddenly cut in, shattering the stagnant air. The flying ship had, at some unknown point, hovered over a scene of crumbling walls and ruins, with rotten timbers obliquely insert in the scorched earth, like a scene from hell. The Han family's ruins have been reached. Chapter 27, he began to think. How high a state can one reach in order to be stable? How strong a force can one have to protect oneself? After disembarking from the flying boat, the two walked side by side. After some thought, she seemed to feel that her previous statement was inappropriate. "It's all right if you couldn't answer what I asked earlier," she suddenly said, her voice softer than before. Seeing Qin Wanchuan look over, she continued, "Discussing the Tao is still too early for you and me. If it were me, and I was asked what Tao I sought, I would only be able to shake my head. So, there's no need to rush." Qin Wanchuan chuckled at her words. How gentle. At first glance, she seemed like a cold beauty who was a bit of a simpleton, but he didn't expect her to be so gentle. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry. The Tao requires a lifetime to seek. How could one be anxious for a moment? Gentle? Me? Li Qingluan's breathing hitched. This unfamiliar left her momentarily frozen. A ripple of an unusual feeling spread in her heart, and she instinctively wanted to refute it, but found that the corners of her mouth had unconsciously curved into a slight smile. Unexpectedly, she didn't dislike it. However, her soft and gentle demeanor made the expressions of the Li family members behind her turn strange once more. The cold beauty who would shout scram and resort to violence at the slightest disagreement now looked like this. 2 words. Unfamiliar. The two walked slowly over the scorched earth of the Han family ruins, their boot soles crunching on broken rubble, making faint sounds. Li Qingluan suddenly grabbed Qin Wanchuan's sleeve. "Be careful." She unleashed a palm strike, knocking down a precarious broken wall nearby. Her gaze swept over the charred beams and cracked foundation, her fingertips lightly tracing the various marks on the damaged wall. Not a blade of grass grows. It's not a typical vendetta, but a sect exterminated by a powerful individual. She frowned, withdrawing her hand, her cuff smudged with specks of black ash, then asked, "Why are you here?" As the breeze carried ashes past his fingertips, Qin Wanchuan suddenly crouched down and picked up half a charred plaque. Only half of the character Han remained, but one could still discern the vigorous brushwork of its original calligraphy. A friend's family. 37 people, the oldest barely 60, the youngest just a year old, he murmured softly, his fingertips tracing the plaque. Every year on the beginning of spring, they would hold a banquet under the old plum tree in the courtyard. Several deep sword marks on it seemed to tell of their final struggle. Though from a humble background, their family was harmonious and happy. It should have been like that. Qin Wanchuan suddenly raised his hand, realizing his palm was stained with years of black ash. In the simulation, it wasn't just text. He could feel a part of the emotions. When the Han family was exterminated, Qin Wanchuan had only one thought. What realm is high enough to be safe? What power is strong enough to protect oneself? An immortal emperor can transcend. Li Qingluan's heart stirred, and she instinctively grasped his wrist. A pure white handkerchief slipped halfway out of her sleeve, but then she paused. She suddenly realized such a gesture was too intimate. Fortunately, the young master did not resist. After wiping it, she inexplicably let out a sigh of relief, but then froze the moment she looked up. In the sunlight, Qin Wanchuan's profile was extremely taut. He gazed down at the charred plaque, his eyelashes casting a heavy shadow on his face, his eyes seeming to burn with a dark fire, an intensity that shouldn't be present on a 9-year-old's face, an expression so earnest it was almost stubborn. Not enough, he interrupted decisively, his knuckles tightening slightly. Looking at Qin Wanchuan like this, Li Qingluan was momentarily stunned. She suddenly realized that the person standing before her at this moment was different from everyone else. Those who haven't experienced the despair of an ant being crushed to death naturally wouldn't understand. An immortal emperor might be enough in this world, but he was not Han, nor was he in the Xianming realm. In the 10 Directions Immortal Court, an immortal emperor truly isn't enough. Li Qingluan's crimson lips parted slightly. Then a heavenly emperor. Also not enough. The 3 words landed with a resounding thud, startling a few rooks among the ruins. The plaque in his hand cracked with a clack, and fragments rustled onto the scorched earth. Previously, Qin Wanchuan had been well protected at home, and his bold declaration of becoming an immortal emperor was merely a confidence in his own talent. But now it was different. He had gained a deeper understanding. "There's nothing left here, let's go." His tone was as calm as if discussing dinner, the suffocating pressure from earlier completely gone. Qin Wanchuan casually brushed off dust, and as he turned, he straightened a crooked wild grass. This time, he made no grand declarations. He wanted to see more, to feel more. "You?" Li Qingluan stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. But Qin Wanchuan had already walked 5 steps away, casually plucking a wild grass and twirling it between his fingers. Sunlight fell on his hair, making him appear so transparent that one could almost see the unique vitality of youth flowing in his bloodline. At times profound, at times childish. Which one was the real him? Her knuckles unconsciously rubbed the handkerchief, and she suddenly took 3 steps in 2, grabbing the young master's grass-stained finger. "Don't move. Dirty." Her voice and actions were very gentle, which Qin Wangchuan didn't mind, only thinking she was fond of cleanliness. Like an elder sister. But in the eyes of the accompanying people, the Qin family members looked up, meeting the meaningful gazes of the Li family disciples. Their eyes met in midair, a knowing smile playing on their lips. "By the way, since he was a friend, why didn't he seek you out when his family was exterminated?" "If I had to say, we were actually enemies. It's true that we admired each other, but as long as we're enemies, we can't show mercy. If you can't do it, I can help you." "No need, I will handle it." As a green spiritual light flowed around the boat, the flying boat slowly ascended, setting sail once more. The destination of this journey, Lower Thousand Provinces. Lower Thousand Provinces, Kanglin Sea Realm. On the cobblestone streets of Qingshi Town, the morning mist had not yet fully dispersed. Inchiyue left the Yin family, her steps light as she hurried through the morning market, eager to return to her sect. The powerful individual who had descended upon the Holy Land earlier had specifically mentioned a daughter of the Yin family, making her wonder if it was related to her family. That's why she took advantage of her free time to come back and inquire. But the result was fruitless. The Holy Land was a few days' journey from home, so she had to set off early. As she turned a street corner, she suddenly stopped. In the morning mist, a young man stood alone under an old locust tree, gazing at its leaves. Although still young, his height and demeanor made him seem no different from a 14 or 15-year-old. He wore a black and gold brocade robe, with a green jade pendant hanging from his waist, radiating a warm luster in the morning light. Most striking were his eyes, still showing a hint of childishness, yet revealing a calmness beyond his years. How could such a noble young master appear alone in a small town? Inchiyue hesitated for a moment, then straightened her dress and walked forward, saying in what she believed was a kind tone, "Young master, are you lost?" The boy looked up at her voice, his gaze lingering for a moment on the Qinglan Holy Land token at her waist, just wandering around. His voice was clear like a jade chime, yet carried a composure that belied his appearance. "I see." Inchiyue smiled sweetly, but her fingers in her sleeve unconsciously tightened around her sash. How strange. He's clearly an ordinary person with no chi whatsoever, yet looking at him gives me a stinging sensation. At 14, she had already entered the first realm, officially becoming a cultivator. Moreover, her heaven-defying talent was hailed as once in a century. The last time she felt this way was when she saw those immortals from the upper realm. But how could a child, even younger than herself, compare to an immortal? Inchiyue shook her head, thinking, and continued. Although Qingshi Town is small, Sugar Manjiang at the East End has excellent craftsmanship. If young master doesn't mind, you could try his osmanthus candy. I'm familiar with all the streets and alleys around here. If young master needs to find someone or ask for directions, I can help. It wasn't that she was so attentive to everyone. It was just that the person in front of her was truly too special. She inexplicably wanted to say a few more words. "Looking for someone? I do have someone I need to inquire about." The young master looked up, the morning light flashing across his eyes. In that instant, Inchiyue felt as if she saw a clear autumn pool reflecting cold stars, so pure and transparent it was startling. The daughter of the Yin family, Inchiyue. Qin Wangchuan calmly stated Inchiyue's name and origin, his voice neither loud nor soft, yet made her heart skip a beat. "Where's your childhood friend?" Chapter 28, Chemo River. The tomb of Qin Wangchuan. Although he was prepared, after seeing the name on the tomb, Qin Wangchuan couldn't help but exclaim, "This damned, idiotic system, it really bound the wrong person." On the cold stone tablet, the 3 characters Qin Wangchuan were glaring. The system should have bound the humble Qin Wangchuan, not the imperial family's Qin Wangchuan. There were 2 characters different, which meant the one buried in the grave was the true protagonist. However, due to some unknown accident, the humble counterattack system that should have belonged to Qin Wangchuan ended up binding to him. Not only did the system bind the wrong person, but it also spent 5 full years reading the terms. 5 years was enough time for a talentless, humble young man without a golden finger to silently die in a family dispute. According to the system's plot, Qin Wangchuan could have relied on the system to cheat his way through, rising from obscurity, feigning weakness to ambush stronger foes, befriending all kinds of beauties, having many women, and ultimately achieving supreme dominance. Even transcending the world was not impossible. A true Xuanhuan novel's male lead. but now let alone a counterattack. The grass on his grave was already 3 meters high. He died unexpectedly at the age of 4. Inchiyue's voice was low, her slender fingers gently caressing the tombstone. Later, it was discovered that a maid was secretly behind it. Although she has been dealt with, the dead cannot be brought back to life. He will forever remain 4 years old. Moss covered the cracks in the tombstone, and a few withered leaves swirled down in front of the grave. Inchiyue looked up at the young master before her, a deep confusion flashing in her eyes. May I ask what your relationship with him is, young master? An old friend. Qin Wangchuan tossed the bouquet of flowers he had bought on the way in front of the tombstone, a complex emotion playing on his lips. The person was already dead, so he could say whatever he wanted. The moss on the inscription dampened his fingertips. Who would have thought that this young man, who was bullied to death by a maid, was supposed to be the luck-blessed male lead of a thrilling novel? If the system had awakened a year earlier, if he had held on for one more year, ultimately, to be played to death by a maid, he was truly useless. An old friend? Inchiyue frowned slightly, thinking to herself how she had never heard him mention it. Although this explanation barely made sense as to why the other party knew her name, she always felt that something was amiss. It was too smooth. The young master seemed to know everything about her, yet she knew nothing about him. Forget it, we just met by chance. Thinking too much is useless. The morning breeze swept over the grave, carrying a few withered leaves that swirled at Inchiyue's feet. Since it's a reunion of old friends, if he knew in the afterlife, he would surely be happy. It's getting late. I still need to rush back to the sect to report. She tidied her wind-blown hair. Let's part ways here. Let's go together. This sudden invitation made Inchiyue's breath catch. She looked up, and the young man was gazing towards Qinglan Holy Land. Those eyes, which should have been youthful, held a startling depth. Is young master also going to the Qinglan Holy Land in the northern region? She asked tentatively, secretly forming a detection spell with her fingers, still unable to sense any spiritual pressure fluctuations. There were only 2 explanations for this situation. Either he was a mortal child who had never cultivated, or the disparity in their realms was unimaginably vast. Qin Wangchuan withdrew his gaze and nodded slightly. In his field of vision, a translucent system panel appeared before him. New mission. Endure humiliation. Path of escape. Mission description. To save your childhood sweetheart, you, a mortal, defied the immortal sect, erupting with world-shaking power in a desperate situation, ultimately slaying Elder Mo Qinjue of Qinglan. However, this act has angered the Holy Land, and now pursuers are closing in. Furthermore, during your escape, you discover the evil cultivation technique seems to be connected to the Qinglan Holy Land's sect master. Objective 1. Temporarily avoid the edge, difficulty, hard. Escape Qingshi Town and survive the Holy Land's pursuit. Reward. Simulation count +1, origin +75. Objective 2. Endure humiliation, difficulty, extremely hard. Change your appearance and join Qinglan Holy Land to investigate the source of the evil cultivation technique. Reward. Origin +100. Objective 3. World-shaking feat, difficulty, nearly impossible. Defeat the Qinglan Holy Land Sect Master, 5th Realm late stage. Completion reward. Origin +150. Note: this mission is extremely difficult. It is a phased long-term mission, taking 3 to 4 years at the least, or 7 to 8 years at most. Please proceed with caution, host. Oh wow, how thoughtful. I'll go kill him now. The northern region is thousands of miles from here, taking at least 3 days. Inchi couldn't help but remind him, young master, your family probably won't agree. She only thought the young man was curious and wanted to go play. However, 3 days. Before her words finished, Qin Wangchuan suddenly chuckled softly. Then he looked up at the sky, and in the next moment, the world suddenly changed color. Boom! The clouds were torn apart, as if by an invisible giant hand, and amidst the violent spatial turbulence, the legendary sky, sword-flying ship crushed through the void realm. Every feather of the Azure Phoenix sculpture on its bow erupted with dazzling sword chi, causing birds within a 100-mile radius to flee in terror. The moment the flying ship appeared, a violent spiritual pressure poured down like a heavenly river. Inchiyue felt her knees weaken, and she was slammed hard onto the ground. With her hair disheveled, she could only barely support herself with trembling arms. A few breaths are enough. The young man's voice was still calm, but now it was accompanied by the thunderous sound of the flying ship descending. Inchiyue looked up at the flying magic treasure before her, far exceeding the descriptions in the Holy Land's ancient texts, her throat tight. All of this had surpassed her understanding. Young master, who exactly are you? My surname is Qin. He stood beneath the flying ship, looking down. His black and gold brocade robe billowed like raging waves in the spiritual pressure storm, and behind him was the sky-obscuring azure jade hull. Every ancient Tao pattern on it spoke of how extraordinary this object was. This character should not be unfamiliar to you. In Chiyue's pupils suddenly constricted. Qin. This character struck her heart like a heavy hammer, making her ears ring. That scene from 2 years ago suddenly flashed in her mind. The character Qin embroidered on the shoulder of the golden-armored cultivator, the blood spatter on her lips when Elder Imo Chinjua exploded. And that phrase, a great figure you couldn't reach even if you cultivated for 10,000 lifetimes. She suddenly trembled violently, not from fear, but from a revelation that was almost a shiver. This young man before her was the Your Highness, mentioned by that golden-armored cultivator 2 years ago. That existence, who with a single decree crushed her nightmare and was like a savior, now stood before her. 2 years ago, did you send someone to save my life? In Chiyue's voice was tight, her fingertips unconsciously digging into her palm. In the shadow cast by the flying ship, the young man shook his head. I had my own purpose. It cannot be called saving you. Just as In Chiyue gazed at Qin Wangchuan, feeling both surprised and delighted, the next moment, a clear, cold voice, imbued with sword chi, suddenly exploded in her mind. Have you seen enough? As the flying ship slowly descended, a woman stood on the deck. A very beautiful woman. She was now staring at her with cold eyes. Control your eyes. Chapter 29. Under the Supreme Being, the ordinary people are like ants. Qinglan Holy Land, Forbidden Land in the back mountains. That girl finally left. Sect Master Zuan Mingzi stood with his hands behind his back in the center of the stone chamber. Under the flickering candlelight, his old face, usually adorned with a kind smile, was now as sinister as a ghost. He lightly tapped the stone wall with his fingertips, and a dull echo reverberated through the secret chamber. It's been 2 years, his voice was hoarse. Since the day the upper realm came and slew Elder Imo Chinjua, we have been treading on thin ice. 4 figures emerged from the shadows of the stone chamber, all core elders of the Holy Land. Their expressions were solemn, and their auras were obscure and hard to discern, completely devoid of their usual immortal-like demeanor. We had intended to fully support Elder Imo Chinjua, enabling him to break through, and then our Qinglan Holy Land could be called the strongest. But we never expected a casual move from an upper realm mighty figure to ruin our decades-long plan in an instant. Using the name Qinglan to practice evil cultivation was truly a last resort, as there was more than just their holy land in this world. If they didn't have a trump card, they wouldn't even be able to sleep peacefully. Who cares if it's an evil technique or a good technique, as long as it can make us stronger? The third elder spoke sinisterly, his withered fingers toying with a blood-red jade slip. So, shall we continue? If we stop now, years of effort will be wasted. If we continue, then who will it be? Who will it be? The candlelight suddenly flickered violently, and the chamber instantly fell silent. Everyone simultaneously recalled the nightmare-like scene from 2 years ago. 9 golden-armored figures stood in the air, and just a trace of their spiritual pressure caused the entire Holy Land's mountain-protecting formation to crack. Elder Imo Chinjua, a dignified middle stage of the Third Realm, was reduced to a mist of blood before such an existence, without even having time to scream. It wasn't until today, with In Chiyue having left the Holy Land, that they dared to gather here to discuss. The fourth elder suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Stop talking about that. Let's figure out how to deal with her first. Watch your words. The Grand Elder swept a cold gaze over them. Have you forgotten the might of the Upper Realm Immortals descent that day? What if she has an Upper Realm mark on her? This won't do. That won't do. So what do you suggest we do? We nurtured her for so many years, pouring in so many resources, the sect master suddenly said in a low voice. That girl's primordial Een was supposed to be the finest tonic. He waved his sleeve, and the stone wall rumbled as it turned, revealing a dense array of jade slips behind it. Each jade slip was engraved with a name, and most of them were already dim. These were the disciples who had disappeared over the years. We can't drag this out any longer. A blood-red glint flashed in Zuan Mingzi's eyes. Since the upper realm hasn't paid attention for 2 years, it means that girl is just an insignificant pawn. He suddenly crushed the jade slip in his hand, and the blood-colored dust coalesced in the air into a phantom image of In Chiyue. We won't take her primordial Een. We cannot be greedy at this moment. When she returns to the mountain in a few days, his 5 fingers formed a claw, and the phantom image shattered in response. Then we'll send her to meet Elder Imo Chinjue. The elders exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. They were all cunning individuals who had cultivated for centuries. They wouldn't risk danger for the beauty of a young girl. Just as the group was discussing, the entire stone chamber suddenly trembled violently. What's happening? The Grand Elder's face changed in horror, and the magic treasure whisk in his hand, strangely, snapped into two. Everyone rushed out of the secret chamber, but the moment they stepped over the threshold, they felt as if struck by lightning. Boom! The entire Qinlan mountain range trembled violently, and rocks tumbled down. Looking up, a jade flying boat, so vast it obscured the sky and sun, had, at some unknown point, arrived at the top of the mountain-protecting formation. The shadow cast by its 1,000-zhang hull enveloped the entire main peak in darkness. This is impossible. Sect Master Zuan Mingzi uttered an incredulous sound. This is a flying boat? How can there be such a massive flying boat in the world? It wasn't that he hadn't seen the world, but the flying boat before him was simply too enormous. Just the azure phoenix sculpture at its bow was larger than the entire Qinlan main peak. At this moment, it was slowly descending, and the golden light barrier of the mountain-protecting formation appeared, clearly already activated. Enemy attack. Quick! Fully activate the formation. The elder responsible for guarding the formation's core didn't yet know what was happening, only able to shriek hysterically at those beside him. As spirit stones were fed in, the mountain-protecting formation's light surged. However, with a crisp crack sound, this mountain-protecting formation, boasted to withstand the full strike of a fifth realm powerhouse, now shattered like a child's soap bubble. Under the flying boat's gentle pressure, it couldn't even hold for a single breath before collapsing with a roar. Amidst the falling golden light particles, the flying boat continued its slow descent. It didn't even activate any offensive or defensive measures. It simply, at a leisurely pace, crushed the Qinlan Holy Land's millennium-old mountain-protecting formation into dust. Zuan Mingzi's legs gave out, and he directly knelt on the ground. Upper Realm, Immortal. In the face of true power, their proud mountain-protecting formation couldn't even make the flying boat slow down. It was like ants forever unable to comprehend the weight of an elephant's footstep. Without a doubt, it was absolutely a mighty figure from the Upper Realm. On the rear deck of the flying boat, Inchiua looked at the disintegrating Holy Land beneath her, as if in a dream. Moments ago, she was still conversing with the mysterious youth under the old locust tree in Qingshi Town. In just a few blinks of an eye, she had returned to the Holy Land. Not only that, this Holy Land, the largest and strongest within a 10,000-mile radius, and the one she was most proud of, was now crumbling beneath her feet. Just the spiritual pressure storm emitted by the flying boat's descent was enough to destroy a Holy Land. This is an Upper Realm person, she murmured to herself. However, these words sounded incredibly ridiculous to the Li family's sword attendant beside her. He sneered, Upper Realm. His tone seemed to convey extreme disdain for the words Upper Realm. Not the Upper Realm. Inchiua suddenly realized that these terrifying beings before her hadn't actually said they came from the Upper Realm. She quickly pressed, then, may I ask, Immortal, where do you hail from? Immortal? The sword attendant pondered for a moment and did not refute. But he also didn't answer, instead shaking his head. The place we come from cannot be spoken of or named in this realm. People of the lower 1,000 provinces often refer to the middle 1,000 province as the Upper Realm. While not entirely wrong, it's not entirely correct either. Only when you truly set foot in the Upper Realm and learn of the existence of the heaven beyond heaven will you know our origins. Speaking the words 10 directions immortal court in the lower 1,000 provinces and middle 1,000 province would invite karma. While not a major issue, there was no need to explain it in detail to the person before him. Heaven beyond heaven. The young girl was startled upon hearing this, subconsciously looking up. Just a few words, yet they shattered her lifelong understanding like a thunderclap. Above the heaven, is there another heaven? Chapter 30. Too lazy to listen. A clean and quick kill. Inchiua murmured to herself, but no one answered her. Go down. Qin Wanchuan's voice from afar pulled her back. Below, Qinglan Holy Land was already on high alert. Welcome, Immortal. The Holy Land's sect master prostrated himself on the ground, his voice loud, echoing through the mountains. The entire Qinglan Holy Land, from the elders and deacons to the disciples and servants, all bowed down, their foreheads pressed to the ground, in an extremely devout posture. It was no different from last time, yet it was completely different. Inchiua followed Qin Wanchuan, slowly walking down the flying ship, her gaze slightly lowered. Her status was different. Last time, she was one of the kneeling crowd. This time, she finally saw clearly. Or rather, she couldn't see clearly at all. She could only see the tiny, dark specks of people kneeling on the ground. It's like looking at ants. Inchiua thought to herself, then secretly glanced at Qin Wanchuan, who was at the very front, and continued to wonder. Has he already grown accustomed to being worshipped like this? What are the Immortal's commands? Zuan Mingzi, his forehead pressed tightly to the ground, asked in a trembling voice. His luxurious purple-gold Taoist robe spread out on the bluestone slab, its intricate cloud patterns on the cuffs, now covered in dust. The aura of these immortals before him was even more formidable than those who visited last time. That invisible pressure was almost tangible, making the surrounding air thick. From Yin Shiyue's perspective, she saw that the backs of the elders kneeling in the front row were already drenched in cold sweat, yet they dared not even wipe it away. So, even a powerful sect master is no different from an ordinary person. She suddenly realized that if they didn't know each other, in the eyes of these worshippers, she would also be no different from an immortal. And what was even more terrifying was, unlike the young master she had seen before who merely put on airs, the young master seemed genuinely accustomed to this, as if it were natural. There wasn't even a ripple in his calm eyes, as if the prostrations of the people at his feet were as common as morning dew sliding off a leaf in the world. Qin Wangchuan looked down, giving him a faint glance. "You are the sect master of Qinglan?" His voice was neither hurried nor slow. The kneeling Zuan Mingzi trembled slightly, but still dared not straighten his back completely. "It is this old servant. Immortal, please command us whatever you wish. Qinglan Holy Land, from top to bottom, will exert all its strength, going through fire and water without hesitation." Before he finished speaking, a drop of cold sweat had already slid down his temple, splashing an almost imperceptible ripple on the bluestone ground. After Zenmingzi finished speaking, his body prostrated even lower, almost like a toad lying on the ground. The back hem of his Taoist robe, embroidered with gold thread, trembled slightly in the morning breeze, as if even the fabric was quivering in fear. After confirming the identity of the person before him, Qin Wanchuan wasted no words, directly raising his hand and drawing a sever character in the air. The moment the golden rune condensed in the air, a sword chi burst forth. CHH. Blood splattered. Zuan Mingzi, who had governed Qinglan Holy Land for hundreds of years, didn't even have time to show surprise before the center of his body mysteriously dissolved and annihilated. Where the golden sword chi passed, flesh and bones silently evaporated, leaving only two halves of his body, still in a kneeling posture, frozen in place. His luxurious Taoist robe lost its support, slowly tilting to both sides like a broken-winged butterfly. This mighty sect master, immortal master, in front of everyone, turned into two separate pieces of a corpse and crashed to the ground. Afterward, the sword chi did not stop, like a celestial river pouring down, spanning dozens of miles across the sky. Wherever it passed, mountains crumbled, clouds split, carving a bottomless gully into the ancient thousand-year-old path of Qinglan Holy Land, finally plunging into the Emerald Lake at the foot of the mountain. While stirring up a 1,000-zhang water curtain, the entire lake was split in two and then returned to silence. Objective 1. Completed. Simulation count +1. Origin +75. Objective 2. Failed. Objective 3. Completed. Origin +150. Congratulations, host, for completing an almost impossible mission. According to systems deduction and calculation, the success rate of this mission was only 0.000000001%. Yet, host, with heaven-defying luck and unyielding spirit, created a miracle unprecedented and unmatched. Listening to the system's ridiculously exaggerated flattery in his mind, Qin Wangchuan felt no sense of accomplishment or joy from completing the mission. At this moment, he had only one thought. He wanted to laugh. However, his casual strike not only astonished others, but even the sword Dao genius Li Qingwan was stunned by it. "You just used a sword seal? But why were you able to use it without a sword?" Current origin, 19.5 times. Current simulation count, 1. He had obtained several simulation count from signing in during these past few years at home, but the effect was not ideal. Fortunately, his origin was already close to 20 times. "Why must one use a sword?" Qin Wangchuan retorted, then looked at the sword chi he had just unleashed. It wasn't merely a single character, but rather, as they had discussed before, the 6 characters of establish, sever, suspend, fall, control, punish, understood, and merged into a single, extremely simple sever character. In essence, it was no longer a spiritual technique, but a Dao technique. With the blessing of the supreme Dao heart, its power was simply heaven-defying, even surprising himself a little. Li Qingwan's eyes widened. Since it's a sword seal, it should naturally be guided by a sword. That's common knowledge. Is that so? Isn't it so? The two stared at each other for a moment. When his gaze fell on Li Qingwan's sword at her waist, he suddenly understood. Their environments since childhood were different. She was born into a sword Dao family, sleeping with swords since childhood. And he, on the other hand, came from the Qin family, where the strong reigned supreme. As a member of the heavenly swordly family, How could she ever think of putting down her sword? It could be used without a sword? Li Qingluan's gaze swept towards the members of the Li family behind her, but those who met her eyes all shook their heads. They had never heard of it either. After the confusion came shock. Doesn't that mean young Master Qin has an innate sword heart? At this, everyone's gazes immediately became complicated. They were already in-laws, yet they had hidden such important information. Qin Huangquan did not notice the thoughts of others. As his mind churned, several thoughts quietly emerged. Am I going down the wrong path again? If I use a sword, will the power be even greater? Shaking his head, he temporarily set these thoughts aside, planning to explore them after returning home. His gaze then shifted forward. Qinglan Holy Land was deathly silent. Zuan Mingzi's mutilated body lay on the ground, blood silently seeping into the bluestone, yet no one dared to look up. The sect master was dead, erased by a single sword chi, like crushing an ant. The kneeling bodies of the Holy Land elders trembled slightly, their foreheads pressed firmly to the ground, even their breathing stifled. They could clearly hear the frantic pounding of their own hearts, yet they dared not let their robes make the slightest rustle, fearing it would attract the gaze of that one. Will die. Looking up means death. The magic treasures of several elders lay at their fingertips, yet they dared not move even a single finger. Those who had just been discussing how to deal with Inchiua now had only one thought in their minds. Please don't let us be noticed. The mountain wind swept by, stirring up a few withered leaves, which drifted across the plaza filled with kneeling cultivators. Those true disciples, deacons, and elders, who were usually high and mighty, now all resembled shrimp, their spines seemingly removed, curled up. Some chattered their teeth, but bit their tongues hard, swallowing the metallic taste of blood. Some sweated profusely, forming a small puddle on the ground, yet dared not wipe it away. They dared not even show grief or anger, because in the eyes of the immortals from the upper realm, these emotions might all be an offense. Resist? Don't be ridiculous. Yin Shiyue stood behind Qin Huangquan, looking at his back with a complex expression. The sect master was kind to me. Why did the young master kill him? Is there some reason? Or is it simply bloodlust? She did not know the reason behind it, and Qin Huangquan had no need to explain it to her. He merely stood there, and the entire Holy Land was forced to prostrate. Your Qinglan Holy Land is not very peaceful. The young man's calm voice descended like a heavenly decree, echoing in the silent plaza. No sooner had he spoken than he led his group and turned to leave, a wisp of clear breeze stirred by his fluttering robes. Everyone remained prostrate, exchanging glances. Though no one could decipher his meaning, they all understood one other thing. This was not a judgment. It was mercy. It was the immortal's pity, a grace bestowed upon ants to continue their meager existence. All right. Qin Huangquan suddenly stopped and looked back. This simple action made everyone present hold their breath, as if even the air had frozen. He casually tossed two items, which arced through the air and fell towards Inchiua. An ancient mirror inscribed with cloud patterns, flowing with obscure Tao rhyme in the sunlight. A jade medicinal pill bottle, faintly emanating the sound of dragon roars and tiger growls. This item is called the Tongxian Mirror. I will contact you through it when needed. Qin Huangquan's voice remained calm, yet it made Inchiua unconsciously straighten her back. After speaking, he paused, then added, the medicinal pills in the bottle are an extra gift. How far you can go depends entirely on your own fortune. Chapter 31. Something seems to be wrong. On the square of Qinglan Holy Land, a silent undercurrent surged. The Tongxian mirror bestowed by Gongzi Qin floated in midair, its swirling cloud patterns and Tao rhymes reflecting on everyone's faces. Thousands of inner sect disciples, outer sect disciples, deacons, and servants prostrated themselves, cautiously looking up, their eyes filled with envy. They couldn't help but wonder if they could gain the favor of that immortal from the upper realm. Would they also be able to ascend in one step? Some looked at the Tongxian mirror in Yin Shiyue's hand, fantasizing about the glory of standing with the mirror themselves. Some stared at the jade pill bottle, as if already smelling the medicinal fragrance. Even a few bold intersect disciples were already pondering in their hearts how to curry favor with this saintess in the future. The prostrate elders stared at the treasure, their eyes flashing with greed, then fear, finally transforming into a certain resolve. Please, Saintess Yin, assume the position of sect master. The grand elder suddenly shouted, his forehead hitting the bluestone slab with a heavy thud. This sound was like a thunderclap, and the entire Holy Land first fell silent. Then a chorus of agreement rose and fell. Only Saintess Yin can inherit the immortal's edge. Qinglan, from top to bottom, will follow Saintess Yin's lead. Steal the treasure? Don't be ridiculous. Haven't you seen that the corpse on the ground isn't even cold yet? Inshiyue froze in place, the precious mirror in her hand almost slipping. She was barely 20 years old, yet she was now pushed into the esteemed position of sect master. She didn't rush to refuse, but subconsciously looked in the direction of the flying boat. By now, the flying boat had already ascended, breaking through the void realm and disappearing. Inshiyue looked at the precious mirror and bottle in her hand and whispered, "What exactly is Gongzi Qin's intention? What does he mean by Qinglong Holy Land is not peaceful? And what does he want me to do?" After much thought, she had only one answer in her heart. Gongzi Qin wants me to manage the Holy Land, to be his hawk. No one would refuse such a good thing. But on the other hand, he killed the sect master who was kind to me. For a moment, Inshiyue was lost in confusion. Suddenly, the remaining warning runes of the mountain protection array flashed violently. Report: the allied armies of the blazing heaven, suppressing hell, and scarlet firmament holy lands have been spotted 700 miles away. The scout's voice trembled. The Grand Elder's face turned pale. These old enemies must have noticed the shattered mountain protection array and seized the opportunity to attack. Now that the Holy Land's grand array was destroyed, how could they resist? Sect Master, please follow me. Everyone else, prepare for battle. Although the elders had ulterior motives, their capabilities were indeed undeniable, and they immediately issued orders. However, just as the two sides were about to clash, blazing heaven Holy Land, with its sect-suppressing treasure Nirvana Fire, comes to pay homage. Xianming Holy Land offers 10,000 caddies of spirit stones. Scarlet Firmament Holy Land is willing to cede 3 spirit mines, only to meet the immortal from the upper realm. 3 messages echoed through the sky, but what was even more shocking than the sound was the scene in the distance. The sect masters of the 3 great holy lands personally led their teams, yet all had removed their crowns and disheveled their hair, kneeling before the mountain gate 10 miles away, like guilty officials. Behind them, the vast army of cultivators was now prostrating themselves, as if surrendering. The elders were stunned, momentarily unable to comprehend the situation. "They're here to pay homage to Gongzi Qin," Inshiyue said, reacting. Only she had a clear mind at the moment. Seeing such a large flying boat, others naturally assumed that an immortal from the upper realm had descended. Although, in fact, that was true. Then how should we respond? "Yes, Sect Master. What should we do?" Suddenly, everyone's gaze turned to her. Only then did Inshiyue feel a sense of reality, never expecting that she would actually become the sect master because of a single word from Gongzi Qin. Since that was the case, she took a deep breath, then loudly declared, "Open the gates and welcome them." Although she was mentally prepared, when Inshiyue looked at the thousands of cultivators kneeling outside the mountain gate, only then did she finally understand that what Gongzi Qin had casually bestowed was not just a treasure. It was a demon-revealing mirror, exposing the ugly truth of the entire cultivation world sycophancy. It was also a sky-measuring ruler, measuring the insignificance of so-called Holy Land dignity before absolute power. But there was one thing she still didn't understand. Why on earth did Gongzi Qin kill the sect master? Days later, in a stone chamber in the forbidden land of Qinglong Holy Land, Inshiyue sat in the sect master's seat with several core elders, led by the Elder of Transmission, kneeling before her. Candlelight flickered in the stone chamber, illuminating the densely packed jade tablets on the wall. These were the names of the disciples who had disappeared over the years. "Speak," she tapped her finger lightly on the armrest, her voice as cold as ice. "Tell me everything you know, without missing a single word." The elders exchanged glances and finally revealed the truth. "Sect Master, no, Xuanmingzi." As the elders confessed Xuanmingzi's crimes, Inshiyue's original faith completely collapsed. So, the sect master I respected so much since I joined the sect not only regarded disciples as cauldrons, but also used the essence and blood of fellow disciples to refine alchemy. Her voice was as light as a dream, yet her fingertips dug deeply into her palm, blood dripping between her fingers. The Tongxian mirror reflected her distorted image, and the girl in the mirror suddenly laughed. "Gongzi Qin killed well. He killed really well." Crack! The armrest was crushed by her bare hands. Inshiyue whispered deliriously amidst the flying fragments. "You filthy things, do you even deserve to be called a holy land?" Only at this moment did she understand how merciful Gongzi Qin's assessment of not peaceful was. That wasn't disappointment at all, but the last shred of dignity given to these beasts. The Grand Elder prostrated himself, hitting his head on the ground. "We deserve 10,000 deaths. But at the time, we truly had no choice. Everything was for the Holy Land." "Shut up. For the Holy Land, you can kill the innocent. If Gongzi Qin hadn't acted, who knows how many more would have died." "You don't know you're wrong." You know you're going to die. The Tongxian mirror suddenly erupted with a dazzling clear light, making several people unable to open their eyes. Yue trembled all over, not from fear, but from excitement. She finally understood why Gongzi Qin killed people. It wasn't senseless bloodlust, but a cleanup of a pile of rotten garbage. Without any explanation, she almost misunderstood him. But on second thought, why would Gongzi Qin need to explain anything to her? It was because she wasn't strong enough. Give the order. Yue suddenly rose, and a jade pill bottle in her sleeve emitted a dragon-like resonance. Effective immediately, Qinlan Holy Land will be renamed Dao Seeking Palace. All who participated in the evil cultivator's affairs, self-cripple your cultivation to preserve your corpse. At the same time, build a stone statue to offer incense, and worship Gongzi Qin. Chapter 32, The Third Formal Simulation, Jiwuchen. Qinlan Holy Land ushered in a major reform. Yue ordered a jade statue of Qin Wangchuan to be carved, but secretly inscribed her own name at the base of the statue. During the reforms, she implemented extreme measures in Qin Wangchuan's name. The Dao-seeking palace only needs one voice. Yue caressed the Tongxian mirror and softly said to the disciples kneeling across the plaza, "That is young master's voice." No questioning was allowed. If there was any, severe punishment would surely follow. Later, she even personally hung an elder who questioned Qin Wangchuan in front of the palace gates, shouting, "This is the consequence of questioning young master." That night, Yue stood alone on the mountaintop. With the Tongxian mirror in her left hand and a cyan jade bottle in her right, she gazed blankly in the direction young Master Qin had departed, her cheek pressed against the cold supreme treasure as she murmured stupid, "If not for you, I would not be who I am today. Young master, how great you are." Yue's distorted face was reflected in the mirror. As a supreme treasure transcending this realm, the Tongxian mirror naturally needed no further explanation, but what was most unbelievable were the medicinal pills in the cyan jade bottle. These were immortal medicines she had never seen before. Simply smelling their fragrance could slowly increase one's cultivation. Yue suddenly laughed foolishly, pressing the mirror surface to her lips as if kissing someone's reflection. "What is the Dao-seeking palace?" she whispered softly, as if murmuring to a non-existent person. "I will climb to the very top, step by step, making everyone prostrate and tremble. Then, I will personally offer it to you. My savior, my God." At this moment, within the Wangchuan pavilion of the Qin family, Qin Wangchuan sat by the bed, his fingertips lightly tapping the windowsill, a hint of indifference flashing in his eyes. Giving Yue those two items was naturally not because he valued her, but for another fundamental reason. In the future, any lower realm tasks can be given to her to do, so I won't have to arrange people. It will save a lot of trouble. Who wouldn't love a perfect task tool? Looking down, Yi Jianwei, in a white dress, was playing the zither in the courtyard. As her slender fingers plucked the strings, clear and melodious zither music flowed out like water, creating ripples in the morning mist. For years had passed, and the former little beggar had also begun to take shape, becoming even more pleasing to the eye. On the other side, far away, many people throughout the Qin family became busy. That was because Qin Wangchuan's 10th birthday banquet was approaching. Its scale was so grand that preparations needed to begin a year in advance. After all, as one of the 10 leaders of the three heavens, this banquet was not only about face, but also an important occasion to display their heritage to various forces. Servants bustled between pavilions and towers, and even the palace lanterns hanging in the covered corridors were fitted with newly made mermaid gauze shades. But Qin Wangchuan, as the guest of honor, appeared exceptionally composed. "Sign in," Qin Wangchuan mentally called out. "Congratulations to the host. You have received a half-stage reward. Low-grade Spirit Stone X100. Even half-stage rewards are here now. The damn system isn't even trying to hide it, is it?" He looked at the prompt on the panel, and for a moment even wondered if he had been set up by the system. The first sign-in was a 9th-stage reward, and with a bang, it directly gave him a heaven-defying physique. Anyone who saw it would have to exclaim, "Damn, that damn system has something." Just when you thought this was just the beginning and fantasized about more heaven-defying rewards to come, reality slapped you backhanded, telling you to dream on. For several years of sign-ins, the most he got was a first-stage reward, occasionally a second stage. And now, even half-stage rewards were appearing. Absurd. Forget it. Qin Wangchuan sighed lightly, and, after glancing at his last simulation attempt, he decisively clicked the Start Simulation button. Third simulation, consuming lifespan, 80 years. Simulation begins. Year 0. You are born into the Ji family, a member of the 10 Directions Immortal Court's Tai Su Emperor clan. As the most outstanding direct bloodline of the Ji family in this generation, 9 phoenixes arrived at your birth, and purple chi flowed from the east for 30,000 miles. The old ancestor personally bestowed upon you the name, Ji Wuchen, meaning unrestrained and without dust. Year 1. You are born with the primordial sacred physique, a purple Tao pattern appearing between your brows, and all your meridians are unblocked. At just 1 year old, you could already stir the Tao rhyme of heaven and earth, shocking the entire Ji family. Year 3. You begin to systematically cultivate the Tai Su Emperor scripture, entering meditation in 3 days and reaching the first realm in 7 days. The Ji family old ancestor stroked his beard and praised. This child has the demeanor of a heavenly emperor. You pretended not to understand what he meant, but secretly rejoiced in your heart. No one should be more heaven-defying than me, right? Year 5. In the clan's grand competition, you, at 5 years old and in the third realm, defeated your 10-year-old cousin. It should have been a scene of great joy, but you looked back. You saw your father conversing with someone on the viewing platform. With Wuchen's talent, he should have few rivals among his peers, right? Although good, among his peers, that one from the Qin family possesses the eternal life, immortal body. This was the first time you heard the word Qin. Year 7. You accompanied the old ancestor in secluded cultivation to comprehend the void seal. When you left the 7th palm print on the stone wall, your heart was filled with joy. Comprehending 7 palms in a few months, this comprehension ability was truly heaven-defying. However, the long-awaited praise did not come. The old ancestor stroked your head and sighed. If only you had half the comprehension ability and courage of that little grandson from the Qin family. It was as if an unknown fire exploded in your mind. You looked at your trembling hands and for the first time experienced a burning sensation in your lungs. Those were emotions that should not appear in you, emotions named jealousy and anger. Year 8. You secretly began to investigate who the Qin family's little grandson was. Very little intelligence was found. Only one thing you came to know. His name was Qin Wangchuan. He was 3 years younger than you. There was also something the Qin family did not hide. Qin Wangchuan was a Qilin child, created by the Qin family over 100 years with countless supreme treasures, possessing the eternal life, immortal body, and destined for immortal ascension in the future. Immortal ascension? You scoffed at this, feeling it wasn't all that impressive. Year 10. You swept through your peers at your 10th birthday banquet. As the crowd cheered, you stared intently at the seats on the east side. That was the Qin family's location. He didn't come? Right. He's only 7 years old this year. You were disappointed, but also breathed a sigh of relief. No one knew that you both wanted to meet this Qilin child, but also feared being shocked by his heaven-defying talent if you saw him with your own eyes. Yes, you were afraid. Afraid of being outdone. Afraid of disappointing your clansmen's expectations. Year 11. You began to frequently dream of a blurry figure. He stood at the peak of a high mountain and chuckled as he looked back. You can't even see my back. Qin Wangchuan. You woke up from the dream, calling out that name. Year 12. The old ancestor bestowed upon you your innate divine weapon, the Tai Su halberd. Everyone held the highest expectations for you, but during a trial. When the tip of your halberd pierced the 18 trial puppet, you suddenly went mad and shattered the entire training ground. My mind is in disarray. Why did I suddenly think of him? You hid in the shadows, clutching your head and asking yourself, but no one answered you. Year 13. The Qin family sent an invitation, inviting the Ji family to observe their 10th birthday banquet. You held the invitation in your hand and stared at it for 3 days and 3 nights. Simulation paused. Hold on. He wouldn't have taken me as a heart demon, would he? Qin Wangchuan pondered slightly, and the more he thought, the more he felt this was possible. What kind of normal person would stare at an invitation for 3 days and 3 nights? Chapter 33, since you like playing chess so much, let's play a big game. Whether it's a heart demon or not, I don't know. But from the looks of it, a fight is definitely unavoidable. Simulation continues. Same year, during 9th young Master Qin's 10th birthday banquet, someone attempted an attack. Although quickly suppressed, it still caused a considerable disturbance. You stepped forward at this moment, your gaze firm as you challenged Qin Wangchuan. The attack had just ended, and you were prepared for rejection, but to your surprise, he agreed. Only when you truly stood before him did you understand why so many people spoke of him. Your palms began to sweat, and you already knew in your heart that you would lose, but you were unwilling. Finally, you made your move. Thinking of testing him first, you struck out with a Void Realm seal. The entire area was instantly eroded by Void Realm power. However, when the dust settled, his clothes were completely unharmed. You were about to summon your Tai Su halberd, but in the next moment, his slash arrived before your eyes in a blink. That sword was so fast, you didn't even realize how it came. In the last second before being struck, you looked at Qin Wangchuan, wondering why he was so strong despite being 3 years younger than you. But what you saw was Qin Wangchuan gazing at the sky, not even looking at you directly. A senior from your family intervened, and your body was unharmed, but your Dao heart had shattered into powder. Did I make him feel like a loser? Qin Wangchuan raised an eyebrow slightly. You came looking for me, so you can't blame me. Year 14. You returned to the Ji family. One day, while cultivating, you suddenly found that no matter how you urged it, your spiritual platform remained dormant, showing no reaction. Seniors, elders, and old ancestors from your family each tried, but failed to find a cause. Some even speculated if Qin Wangchuan had damaged your meridians during that encounter. You remained silent, but one question lingered in your heart. If no matter how much I cultivate, I can't surpass him, then what's the use of cultivating? Year 15. Your cousin brought back a 9 nether lotus. Brother, this might cure your illness. Although you didn't think it would be useful to avoid disappointing your family and cousin, you still consumed it. Your injuries did not improve. In fact, they felt even worse. Year 16. Your cousin visited more frequently, far more diligently than before. But you paid no attention, instead focusing on gathering information about Qin Wangchuan. You knew deep down that he was the cause of everything. Just one win, just one time is enough. Year 18. You dismissed your Dao protectors and went to the lower realm alone to clear your mind. After confirming that you were truly alone in the lower realm, your cousin, who had been secretly following you for a long time, appeared and captured you. A playful, cold smirk played on her lips. Cousin, you're already crippled. Your saint body is useless. Why not give it to me? It was then that you realized her true intentions, but it was already too late. Year 20. You were imprisoned in a dungeon, where your heart's blood was extracted. One deep night, the cell door suddenly opened. You roared and broke free of your chains, but were suppressed by the newcomer with a single glance. On the verge of death, you saw your cousin approach, wearing the Wang family's attire, and coldly take the bloodline Dao lines from your glabella. If you had won against him that day and bought some time, this wouldn't be happening now. Don't blame me. The 10 great emperor clans, apart from the 3 heavens, already struggle to survive. My Wang family uses such methods only for self-preservation. Qin Wangchuan cannot live. If he continues to grow, the balance between the 3 great heavenly emperors will eventually break. At that time, there will surely be widespread suffering. Everything is for the greater good. Simulation ended. Final achievement. Wielder of the halberd, unable to fall. Survival time, 20 years. Ending. A life of obsession, all for naught. You were born a prodigy, destined to rule myriad realms. Yet due to a comparison, you fell into the abyss of heart demons. Your father sigh at 5 years old, like a curse, entanglement your entire Dao path. You thought your talent was exceptional, your strength immense, and even if you were weaker, it was only by half a step. But the reality was incredibly cruel. Upon realizing the gap between you and him, your Dao heart shattered, and your cultivation could no longer advance in this life. However, burdened by many hopes, and wishing to escape the heart demon as soon as possible, you underestimated your cousin and did not notice her hidden identity and purpose, ultimately falling into a trap. You ended this life in humiliation. Additional commentary. If you had used your strongest move from the start when you stood against Qin Wangchuan back then, you wouldn't have lost so miserably, shattering your Dao heart. However, fear took root, and you ultimately became afraid. What a pity. Please choose the following rewards to inherit. 1. 200 years of lifespan. 2. Imperial rank cultivation technique, Void Realm Seal, and its comprehension points. 3. Origin plus 400. Qin Wangchuan read through the entire simulation, his heart filled with mixed emotions. Ji Wuchen, he softly murmured the name, a hint of mockery flashing in his eyes. A prodigy, yet ultimately ambushed and killed by a rat. Was his death unjust? Yes. Was he wrong? No. What a pity. Outside the window, the morning mist gradually dispersed, and Yi Jianwei's zither music had stopped at some point. Qin Wangchuan looked at the busy servants in the distance, his thoughts drifting to the Ji family prodigy he had never met. He was merely young and reckless, meeting a towering mountain at the peak of his pride. If he had chosen to go around, perhaps one day he could have reached the pinnacle. Qin Wangchuan said, shaking his head with a light sigh, yet there was no trace of pity in his eyes, but he chose the most difficult path to challenge me. It seems overconfident, but it is actually an unsolvable problem. One is not young without being reckless. If he had chosen to go around, he would not be worthy of the title prodigy. Tapping his fingertips lightly on the windowsill, Qin Wangchuan's gaze fell on the words Wang family in the simulation record, and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. Han Han is a pawn, Ji Wuchen is also a pawn. All of this is no coincidence. It's very likely the work of a group of people behind scenes. The Wang family, what a Wang family. He suddenly laughed, and his aura made Yi Jianwei, who had just stepped into the courtyard, unconsciously take half a step back. Her young master was usually gentle, but sometimes he would reveal a terrifying side. Whenever this happened, she knew someone was about to suffer greatly. No exceptions. I choose 3. As his words fell, the sound of that shattered restraint exploded in the depths of his soul once again, and golden flames ignited in Qin Wangchuan's pupils. Innumerable specks of origin light, like stardust, awoke from his internal organs, stirring a silver-blue blizzard in his bloodline. Every cell was disintegrating and reorganizing, and unique immortal bone markings appeared on his bones. This was by no means an ordinary advancement in cultivation, but a resonance triggered when the core of his origin was ignited. Current origin, 24.5 times the current simulation count, 0. Qin Wangchuan slowly closed his eyes, feeling the surging power within his body. Each increase in origin was like prying open a deeper law, allowing the passive cultivation speed of the eternal life immortal body to reach a new level. Soon, at this rate, I'll soon enter the 6th realm, he whispered, a subtle coldness curving his lips. Since you all enjoy playing chess so much. Qin Wangchuan raised his hand, and a black piece condensed out of thin air, slowly rotating in his palm, dark and profound, as if it had swallowed all the surrounding light. Then this young master will play with you all properly. How can these few people be enough? Get everyone involved, and let's play to our heart's content. Ding! Detected strong emotions from the host, triggering the mission, breaker of the game. Mission content. Uncover the Wang family's conspiracy, shatter the undercurrents of the 10 Directions, Immortal Court. Reward. Unknown. Qin Wangchuan's lips curled slightly, and he casually flicked the black piece into the air. It's rare for you to be normal, system. Ding! The mission is automatically issued. This system has no right to view it. It doesn't matter. When the chess piece fell, it landed precisely in the center of the words, Wang family, on the simulator panel. Everything begins with the 10th birthday banquet. I will put an end to this undercurrent. Chapter 34. Qin family banquet begins, hands numb after receiving gifts. As time passed, invitations for 9th young Master Qin's 10th birthday banquet finally spread throughout the heavens. Even those not of imperial family lineage now understood the significance of this banquet. It was the Qin family, one of the heavenly emperors, 10 heads and 3 heavens, and it marked the first formal appearance of the Qilin child, who possessed the eternal life, immortal body. Undercurrents surged across all continents. Imperial family princesses bathed in incense for 3 months, solely to perfectly perform a rainbow skirt-breaking formation dance. A grandmaster of alchemy exhausted half a lifetime's savings to refine a furnace of 9 revolutions profound spirit pill as a congratulatory gift. And there was no shortage of first-rate aristocratic families whose genealogies were still wet with ink from being revised, forcibly fabricating connections to the Qin family. The reason was simple. If one could catch the eye of that young master, it would be like a fish leaping over the dragon gate, ascending to heaven in a single step. At the same time, the position of legal wife also represented an alliance between families. Everyone wanted this opportunity. As the morning light dawned, Wangchuan Pavilion's exterior was already adorned with star-patterned silk. When Li Qingwan entered the inner room with a jade comb, she happened upon a chaotic scene involving Qin Wangchuan and his servant. Young master, how do I wear this clothing? I'll do it. How can that be? You are of noble status. Let me do it. She stepped forward softly, deftly unfolding the originally intricate clothing and gesturing for Qin Wangchuan to put it on. Her gaze inadvertently fell upon a half-eaten snack on a nearby table, and a hint of doting helplessness rippled in her glazed eyes. You're quite leisurely, while everyone outside is in a frenzy preparing for your banquet. Qin Wangchuan shrugged at her words. It only seems leisurely. Before he finished speaking, his hair was suddenly pulled with a gentle but firm tug. Li Qingwan had, at some unknown point, moved behind him, her cool jade comb now caught in his knotted hair. Don't move. As her fingertips brushed the young man's delicate collarbone, Yi Jianwei instinctively took a step back. She was just a servant, but young Miss Li was a legitimate daughter of the Li family, equally noble in status, and dared not harbor any dissatisfaction in her heart. Amidst the faint rustle of the comb's teeth breaking through the morning mist, a very soft sigh suddenly mingled in. Your hair has grown longer than last year. Has it? Qin Wangchuan's fingers touched his hair ends. How come I didn't notice? As he spoke, his gaze fell upon Li Qingwan. The bronze mirror reflected their overlapping figures. Her movements in tying his hair were as swift as wielding a sword. The dark golden hair, tie weaving like a swimming dragon, yet she softened her touch abruptly when tying the knot. You've been visiting quite frequently this year. Are you perhaps coveting my body? Qin Wanchuan asked with a playful raised eyebrow. Since his return from the lower realm last time, Li Qingwan had been visiting him frequently. Unexpectedly, the family seniors not only didn't stop her, but even granted her special access to Wanchuan Pavilion. While he wasn't averse to matters of men and women, he only regarded the person before him as a good friend. How could that be? Li Qingwan chuckled, covering her brows, her glazed eyes narrowing slightly, the upward curve of her eye corners resembling a new moon, carrying a hint of playfulness. Her fingertips lightly touched her lips, feigning surprise. You are still young. How could you have such thoughts? Besides, I've long heard that the Qin family elders have arranged a fiancé for you. I wonder who is so fortunate. Her voice was soft and gentle, carrying a touch of regret. The trailing sound, however, was deliberately drawn out, like a feather tickling an ear. After a year of constant companionship, even if it was an arrangement by the family, she had accepted it. The person before her was the husband she, Li Qingwan, had chosen. Did I overthink it? Qin Wanchuan initially didn't believe it, but her expression didn't seem feigned. All right. Li Qingwan took half a step back, then suddenly pulled out a white jade box from her sleeve, a congratulatory gift. Seeing the young man raise an eyebrow, about to open it, she immediately held his hand, her jaw tightening as she added, "The inner banquet is about to begin. You should hurry over." Qin Wanchuan looked up, catching a faint blush on the tip of her ear. Opening the white jade box on the way, a concentric knot lay quietly inside. Crimson rope and golden thread, with a crooked knot at the end, clearly handwoven. You're thoughtful. He chuckled softly, his fingertips tracing the pattern on the knot, and casually tied it to his waist. Outside Wanchuan Pavilion, the carriage was already waiting. The Qin family's inner banquet was held at Starfall Pavilion, followed by the outer banquet. When Qin Wanchuan entered at the chime of the early morning hour, several family elders simultaneously looked at him, their gazes filled with hope. Old Ancestor and Wood Ancestor also made personal appearances, a rare sight within the Qin family. Ninth brother. Eldest brother Qin Wudao was the first to step forward. As his sleeve billowed, a completely black flying sword, wreathed in chaos chi, shot through the air and embedded itself at Qin Wanchuan's feet. This item is for you. The elder's expressions changed. This sword actually carried the chi of ancient chaos creation, but what surprised him wasn't just that. Eldest brother, you really have. Qin Zhaoer looked at the flying sword obliquely stuck in front of her with a displeased expression, but the next moment, second brother Qin Xuanji covered her mouth. Don't say anything bad today. At the same time, he looked at everyone with an apologetic expression. Sorry. You know eldest brother's old habits. Old habits. Qin Wudao looked at the several stick figures in front of him with a strange expression. He blinked and looked closer. Did he recognize the wrong person again? And why are you apologizing? Who's the elder brother here? This time, second brother Qin Xuanji's face looked a bit more normal, though it was unclear if it was his true appearance. He slowly stepped forward, tying a pendant to Qin Wanchuan's waist, and said, I found this in an ancient ruin. It can conceal one's chi, but remember, this item is useless against the great emperor. Thank you, second brother. However, looking at the item, Qin Wanchuan was a bit suspicious. Second brother, shouldn't you be treasuring something like this, rather than giving it to me? It wasn't that Qin Xuanji was stingy, but such an item, fitting his style, shouldn't have been given away. However, the next moment he understood. Qin Xuanji pulled open his collar, revealing several identical pendants hanging inside. It has to be you, second brother. Wait. Qin Zhaoer, sharp-eyed, suddenly caught sight of the concentric knot on Qin Wanchuan's waist just as second brother gave the pendant, and her voice abruptly rose. Where did this broken rope come from? Which woman sent it? Seeing everyone look at her with strange expressions, she suddenly lost her nerve. Qin Zhaoer, her yellow skirt swirling like a whirlwind, threw a brocade box at Qin Wanchuan and tried to run, but he grabbed her by the collar and pulled her back. He opened the brocade box with one hand, and a pair of merfolk pearl earrings lay inside. She put her hands on her hips, her expression playful. I searched for a long time to find these. Put them on and let big sister see. They suit you so well. It was clearly Qin Zhaoer's prank. Qin Wanchuan chuckled softly, not getting angry with the child. Instead, he took out the earrings and put them on her ears. He flicked the swaying earrings with a finger, then stepped back half a pace to observe his smile light. Very beautiful. Immediately, everyone burst into laughter. The sharp-eyed seniors, meanwhile, nodded in satisfaction. He resolved the situation with just a few words. This child not only possesses heaven-defying talent and strength, but is also impeccable in other aspects. You, you. Qin Zhaoer pointed at Qin Wangchuan with one hand and touched her earlobe with the other. Her cheeks flushed, unable to utter a complete sentence for a long time. Haha, you've all given your gifts. Now take a punch from me as a congratulatory gift. A bare-chested, strong man suddenly unleashed a punch, the force of which caused Starfall Pavilion's formation to flicker erratically. Qin Wanchuan was about to block, but then saw fourth brother suddenly slam on the brakes, opening his palm upward to reveal what was inside. A token. Chapter 35. The Qin family banquet begins. Stars arrive. I've been thinking for days and still don't know what to give you, Qin Kuanga said, patting his chest and laughing. Just go to my secret vault and pick something yourself. Thank you, fourth brother. Don't just thank him. Come look at my treasure armor. Seventh sister Qin Qingmi seized the opportunity to step forward and began to show it off. Though called treasure armor, it was actually a gem that, when crushed, revealed the armor. Qin Wanchuan looked at his seventh sister, who had begun to display it in front of the elders, and his expression immediately turned strange. She was the only one who made him feel eerie. He had tested her. She wasn't a transmigrator, yet she could utter the word science. And the things she created were indeed related to science. Things like spiritual chi collapse cannons, heavenly lightning tribulation cannons, spiritual vein-grade starships, and so on. She was truly engaged in scientific research. After finishing her introduction, Qin Qingni handed the item to Qin Wangchuan, muttering, "Don't forget to give me feedback after you've used it." "I won't use it." Qin Wangchuan put it away, muttering to himself. Last time, he used a storage wristband she gave him, and it exploded. He sighed softly, then turned around, nearly startling Qin Wangchuan. His fifth sister, Qin Qingzheng, was incredibly close behind him, her nose almost touching Qin Wangchuan's face, her clear, cold eyes staring unblinkingly at him, as if she were studying some rare treasure. "You have," she sniffed, her tone certain, "a pleasant sword intent." Qin Wangchuan asked curiously, "What does it smell like?" "I can't describe it." She shook her head, as if suddenly remembering something, and reached into the void realm. Several boxes were placed before him, containing a few still-beating hearts. Despite the bloody scene, she seemed completely unfazed, merely handing them earnestly to Qin Wangchuan for body tempering. Qin Wangchuan. He's already tempered his body long ago. The old ancestor couldn't help but laugh. Although these young masters were a bit eccentric, they certainly had a knack for humor. After laughing, he told Qin Wangchuan to accept them and explained, "These are dragon hearts. Eating them will benefit you, and might even awaken some unique abilities." "Thank you, fifth sister." Qin Qingzheng let out a triumphant sigh, seemingly pleased, and stroked Qin Wangchuan's head. Amidst the clinking of a gilded abacus, seventh sister Qin Mian tossed out a storage pouch. "Here, it's full of spiritual marrow. Don't say your seventh sister is stingy." "Spiritual marrow? Really?" Qin Wangchuan was a little suspicious, unable to believe that his stingy seventh sister would give him such a thing. However, upon opening it, his face darkened. It was indeed full of spiritual marrow, but, "Seventh sister, I remember you haven't given me payment for our previous transaction, have you?" Previously, she had said she would by his intelligence, and they would split it 70-30, but he still hadn't received his 70%. Clearly, it had been counted as part of the congratulatory gift. Seeing Qin Wangchuan's skepticism, Qin Miaoyan laughed it off. "No money, but I have a life to give. Come and take it." All except the absent sixth young Master Qin Hongchen had given their gifts. The elders began to present their gifts. His own grandfather's gifts were naturally the best, all heaven and earth treasures useful for cultivation. The old ancestor had also prepared a gift, but now was not the time. As Qin Wangchuan finished receiving the gifts and walked towards his main seat, the entire Starfall Pavilion suddenly became transparent. Everyone was startled to realize that beneath their feet was a colossal tree spanning the starry sky. The undying divine tree revealed its true form, a branch drooping down, bearing a fruit like green jade. "This fruit ripens once every 30,000 years, Wood Ancestor's voice resounded. "Eating it allows one to glimpse the river of fate." "Wood Ancestor, this?" someone at the banquet exclaimed. When had Wood Ancestor ever given such a thing? While surprised, they were also puzzled. Could the ninth young master truly be so heaven-defying as to earn the favor of this ancient divine spirit? His grandfather, Qin Fuhai, gave Qin Wangchuan a look. "Why aren't you accepting it quickly?" Qin Wangchuan stepped forward to receive it. "Thank you, Wood Ancestor." Qin Fuhai suddenly stepped forward to help Qin Wangchuan straighten his clothes, then gently patted his shoulder. "Today's banquet is your coming-of-age ceremony. Go, tell everyone. Tell them you have arrived." As the voice faded, the entire Starfall Pavilion fell silent. Qin Wangchuan stood before the drooping branch of the undying divine tree, the green jade fruit glowing faintly in his palm, making his features seem as if painted. The moment he turned, light and shadow unfurled behind him like a tide. Qin Wudao, Qin Xuanji, and Qin Kuanga, three formidable men, stood together, giving him a look of approval. Qin Qingyi made an O with her hand and mouthed, "Don't forget to use it." Qin Qingzheng still held her ancient sword, her expression blank. Qin Miaoyan rolled her eyes. "What are you looking at? I've lost a fortune." Qin Zhaoer touched the pendant on her earlobe, her eyes dark and unreadable, lost in thought. Qin Wangchuan suddenly smiled. Perhaps the meaning of family lay in this. He took a step, and the Tao rhythm of the undying divine tree flowed beneath his feet. Its branches pierced through myriad realms, casting colossal silhouettes across countless planes. Whether it was the Qin family's generals guarding the borderlands, or the collateral descendants scattered across the Star Sea, all looked up as if sensing something. At this moment, all realms heard his name. Even in the boundless outer regions, whispers echoed. "Son." The inner banquet ended, and the outer banquet began. The moment 9 golden suns leaped from the sea of clouds, 108,000 bronze chimes resonated simultaneously. The sound waves surged like a tide, startling the azure luan perched on the glazed tiles, which, as they flapped their wings, scattered starlight across the sky. The auspicious hour has arrived. With a long cry from the ceremonial officer, the white jade steps spanning 33 heavens lit up in sequence. Each step revealed a golden lotus illusion, extending from the lower realm all the way to the main hall's entrance, like a grand path to the heavens. If one were to look down from the clouds at this moment, they would witness a breathtaking scene. Flying magic treasures from different Tao states crowded the star, and various streams of light intertwined into a dazzling belt around the Qin realm. The 9 leading flying magic treasures overshadowed the sky, and the emblems on them moved everyone. They were unmistakably the symbols of the other 9 great imperial families. The heavenly secret Yin family has arrived. Amidst the announcements, a team of golden-armored warriors shattered the void realm and arrived. The gilded plaque carried by the leader bore 7 characters. "Congratulations to Qin Young Master on his 10th birthday," which were actually forged from stars, now exuding a chaos aura. "Is that the North Pole Zue star?" A sharp-eyed cultivator gasped. They actually plucked a star as a gift. Even more astonishing, the 36 warriors carrying the plaque all had golden Tao patterns on their foreheads. These were clearly the rare, mountain-moving sacred bodies from the upper realm, any one of whom could tear apart a lower realm star with their bare hands. However, on second thought, the 9th young master's mother was from the Yun family. Since it was a gift from his maternal family, what was so surprising about moving stars and plucking the moon? However, the 36 mountain-moving, sacred body warriors suddenly stopped, and the void realm solidified like a mirror. Boom! The sky suddenly cracked with a golden fissure, and 9 5-clawed golden dragons pulling a bronze imperial carriage crushed through the air, their dragon roars shattering miles of clouds. Chapter 36. His weight is so heavy that he forces all parties to exert their full strength. The dark curtains draped from the imperial chariot swayed without wind, vaguely revealing a graceful figure seated within. Just her silhouette sent a shiver through the divine souls of the many holy land lords present. By imperial decree, a purple-robed eunuch stepped out, treading on a dragon's head, and a crimson-gold imperial decree slid from his sleeve. The moment the decree unfolded, the ground of the entire Starfall Pavilion revealed phantom images of mountains and rivers, as if the central province's vast territory was condensed within. To bestow upon young Master Qin, the 86 western prefectures, silence descended upon the hall. The imperial decree bore the territory ceding seal of the Central Province dynasty, and where its imprint fell, it had indeed replicated the land deeds and spiritual veins of the 86 western prefectures of the dynasty. "He's gone mad, ceding territory just to curry favor with that young master." A family elder of an ancient sect murmured to himself, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Central Province dynasty commanded a territory spanning billions of miles. Although 86 prefectures didn't sound like much, this wasn't being given to the Qin family, but specifically to the 9th young Master Qin. It meant that countless secret realms, spiritual minds, and even ancient ruins would belong to him. The purple-robed eunuch added solemnly, "The human emperor said that when a young master reaches the age of adulthood, he may enter the Central Province with this deed." The curtain was suddenly lifted a corner by a delicate hand, revealing half of a peerless face. "If you find the empire uninteresting," a clear, cold female voice, like an ice spring striking jade, said, "this princess can also keep you company." Whoosh! An uproar filled the hall. It's the Grand Princess of the Central Province Dynasty, Jiang Xuanli. This exclamation exploded like a clap of thunder, and the entire banquet instantly became a frenzy. She slowly stepped out from the imperial chariot, a black gold phoenix robe trailing behind her. 9 phoenixes with pearls dangled and swayed in her hair, each jade bead seemingly containing a small world, radiating a hazy, immortal glow. She actually came in person? A saint of a holy land exclaimed in surprise, his folding fan snapping shut with a pat. Jiang Xuanli, the most astonishing and talented princess of the Central Province Dynasty in 10,000 years, was born with Tai Su divine eyes, capable of observing the long river of fate. She once cut down the quasi-emperor Dharma idol of Upper Thousand Provinces with a single sword, and with a single command, forced back 1,000,000 demon troops. Sending both a person and a gift, the Grand Princess actually favors him so much. That's the future empress who hangs high in the 9 heavens. How many prodigies beg for a glance from her? Yet now she's willing to bow down for the 9th young master. Many male cultivators secretly clench their fists, their hearts filled with unspeakable bitterness. Ordinary imperial dynasties naturally couldn't compare to the 10 great emperor clans. But the Central Province Dynasty was an exception. Its foundation was enough to rival an emperor clan. Heavenly Sword Li family arrives. Before they could fully digest the heaven-defying gift from the imperial dynasty, a clear sword hum pierced the sky. Several giant swords broke through the clouds, ancient blood-colored runes twining around their blades. Each line seemed to breathe, exhaling a terrifying aura of slaughter. The Li family elder, leading the way, stepped on swordlight and flicked his sleeve. Clang! A 3-foot-long azure sword plunged down, its blade transparent like crystal, yet within it, a drop of blood, as brilliant as a star, was sealed. Each beat of that blood drop caused the swords of all the sword cultivators present to tremble incessantly. This is a drop of essence blood from our Li family's old ancestor. The Li family elder's voice was clear. Besides this, our old ancestor personally invited the 9th young master to enter the sword tomb for enlightenment. An uproar filled the hall. What kind of place was the sword tomb? It was a forbidden land where the sword emperors of the Li family's past generations were buried. Even direct descendants of the Li family only had one chance to enter in their entire lives. If the previous gifts were merely taking out their foundations, then this from the Li family was truly turning their pants inside out. Isn't this gift a bit too heaven-defying? Someone stared intently at that drop of emperor blood, his atoms apple-bobbing. That's the essence blood of an ancient mighty figure, containing his lifetime of insights. The Li family actually dared to take it out. In the sword tomb, another person exclaimed, that sword tomb is the Li family's treasure. Legend has it that an ancient deity slumbers within. An old man stroked his beard and pondered. These gifts far exceed normal etiquette. It seems each family has significant intentions. Could it be related to the 9th young master's engagement? Engagement? No wonder. The cultivator who had just asked the question suddenly understood. Emperor Clan marriage alliance, with the Empire as the betrothal gift. This is the real main event. Burning Heaven Yin family arrives, presenting 1/9 Flame Golden Crow. As the announcer's voice fell, a dazzling sun suddenly appeared before everyone's eyes. Looking closely, how could it be a sun? It was the Yin family's ultimate treasure, the 9-Flame Golden Crow. Has the Yin family gone mad? They dared to give away their clan-protecting treasure. A cultivator from the Yi family suddenly stood up, his protective true fire uncontrollably surging around him. After seeing clearly, he suddenly realized, it's just a chick. The 9-Flame Golden Crow was an ancient fierce bird capable of burning the sky and boiling the seas. This was real combat power. The Yin family naturally wouldn't give it away easily. But if it was a chick, there was no such concern. Although precious, it would take tens of thousands of years just to grow up. Void Realm G family arrives, presenting 1 card of Void Realm Mysterious Crystal, 100 Dragon Blood Bodhi fruits, and 1 copy of the Tai Su Yin Dao art. Yellow Springs Wong family arrives, presenting 10 bottles of Yellow Springs Weak Water and 1,000 Yellow Springs Origins. The voice of the Qin family's announcer grew increasingly loud, each announcement like a clap of thunder, and the gifts presented by various forces were more astonishing than the last. Just as everyone's attention was drawn to the myriad of exotic treasures in the sky, a gray shadow quietly flitted past. Han Han, using a prearranged identity, blended in with the guests. And 100 paces away from him, behind a coiled dragon pillar, Ji Wuchen stood at the threshold, took a deep breath, and then finally resolutely stepped into the banquet hall. Side hall of the main hall. Yi Jianwei's fingertips gently traced the dark patterns on Qin Wanchuan's lapel. Each line felt slightly warm under her fingertips, like a burning brand. She couldn't see, but she could feel it. That was the Tao rhythm of the sun and moon shining together, the majesty of dragons and phoenixes coiled, the extravagance only true prodigies were worthy of wearing. Her fingers suddenly stopped. Young master, Yi Jianwei's voice was very soft, as if afraid of disturbing the shimmering light in the room. I still won't show my face, right? The hall was silent for a moment. Yi Jianwei was no longer as naive as she once was, and the young man was also beginning to show his true prodigy colors. She was afraid that she, a blind person, would disgrace her young master. Afraid of disgracing me? He suddenly spoke, expressing exactly what was on her mind. Yi Jianwei pursed her lips, her fingers unconsciously twisting the corner of her clothes. Without the sound of the zither, I can't see anything. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. If I can't even walk steadily when we go out later, wouldn't it be? She didn't finish her sentence. Qin Wangchuan suddenly interrupted, the bronze mirror reflecting a cinnabar mark at the corner of his eye. You can't always think of escaping when facing things. If I encounter danger in the future, will you also run away? You will see many more grand occasions than this in the future. How could I abandon young master and run away myself? That's impossible in this lifetime. Yi Jianwei seemed to be stung by these words, suddenly looking up and shouting anxiously. Qin Wangchuan chuckled softly. But you are abandoning me and running away right now. His tone was light, as if he was talking about something unimportant. You're afraid, and so am I. Yi Jianwei was stunned and stammered. Young master is also afraid? Of course, you are human, and so am I. She couldn't see. Otherwise, she would have seen the composure on Qin Wangchuan's face at that moment. His lips slightly curved, his eyes holding a hint of playfulness. There was no trace of fear at all. Then, I will protect young master. See? The future heavenly emperor was so easy to trick. Holding Yi Jianwei's hand, he stepped out. Outside, the various young masters had been waiting for a long time. Oh, Qin Zhaoer leaned against a carved pillar, her almond eyes slightly narrowed, her gaze flickering between their intertwined sleeves. Ninth brother's hand is held quite tightly, isn't it? Chapter 37, you finish your song? I will take the stage. Go, stop chattering. Qin Xuanji walked forward, waving his hand as if shooing flies, then looked at Qin Wangchuan. Since you're out, let's go. Ninth brother shouldn't get lost, right? Qin Wangchuan chuckled. Second brother, it's just this short distance from the side hall to the main hall. How could I possibly get lost? You never know. Qin Xuanji smiled meaningfully, not finishing his sentence before Qin Wudao's sword sheath pressed against his back. Qin Xuanji immediately straightened his expression and fell silent. Third sister Qin Qingni, not one to miss a good show, laughed. Oh, someone really does get lost. Last time at Big Brother's 10th birthday banquet, everyone had arrived, but he was nowhere to be seen for a long time. Guess where we found him? Big Brother, why are you pushing me? Qin Wudao coughed twice expressionlessly, but Qin Qingni ignored him completely and continued. By the pond in the back hall, and he insisted he was admiring the fish. The funniest part is she clapped her hands. There are no fish in that pond at all. Ha ha ha. It was after that incident that this custom started, where all the young masters entered together. Qin Zhaoer burst out laughing. Qin Xuanji also shook his head, suppressing a smile, and even Qin Wangchuan couldn't help but curve his lips. Only Qin Wudao remained expressionless. Let's go. Yi Jianwei lowered her head, not laughing out loud, but the corners of her mouth subtly curved, so these high and mighty Qin family young masters also played around like this in private. Qin Wangchuan held Yi Jianwei's hand, listening to the others recount childhood embarrassing stories, and slowly walked toward the back door of the main hall. Inside the hall, his mother had already begun to preside over the proceedings. Today, I am honored by the presence of all fellow Taoists, celebrating my son's 10th birthday. My husband is away on a distant journey and has not returned, so I, your humble servant, will preside in his stead. I hope for your understanding. Yun Xiaoying, also a prodigy of the Yun family, spoke eloquently to the many important figures, her eyes full of confidence. Madame Yun is too kind. Rumor has it that ninth young master possesses the eternal life, immortal body. Is this true? After a few rounds of greetings, the topic naturally shifted to Qin Wangchuan. Just as Yun Xiaoying was about to say something, a maid came and whispered in her ear. She chuckled and looked at everyone. Since everyone has so many questions, why not ask the main person himself? As her words fell, the hall doors opened. Fourth young master Qin Kuanga and fifth young master Qin Qingzheng stood on either side, one pushing the door, the other raising a hand to gesture. Qin Kuanga grinned, whispering, Ninth brother, don't get stage fright. Qin Qingzheng nodded slightly. 10 years of hidden swordsmanship for one moment of entering the world. Go. Qin Wangchuan smiled calmly. handed Yi Jianwei to his fifth sister, and then stepped in alone. Inside the hall, the previously boisterous guests instantly fell silent. Everyone's gaze focused on Qin Wangchuan as he entered the hall. Even the holy lords and elders who were conversing stopped speaking, as if their breathing had paused for a moment. The young man was exceptionally handsome, but not with the gentle, jade-like beauty. His brow bones were high and sharp, his nose bridged straight as if carved by a knife, and his thin lips formed a stern line. The most captivating feature was his eyes, as black as ink, bottomless, as if they could see through people's souls. He walked slowly, his dark robes flowing like night as he moved. The subtly embroidered dragon patterns on the hem of his clothes appeared and disappeared with his steps, shimmering with dark golden light under the candlelight. A white jade pendant at his waist swayed gently with his steps, emitting a crisp sound that was particularly clear in the silent hall. Is this ninth young master's true appearance? A female cultivator's round fan clattered to the floor, its sound particularly jarring in the dead silent hall. Even Princess Jiang Xuanli's lips curved into a smile of satisfaction. However, all of this was not so pleasant in the eyes of Li Qingwan, who was seated. She felt her possessions were being trespassed upon. Yin Qiuying stepped forward, feigning to adjust his collar, but whispered in his ear, "Why are you wearing this outfit?" Originally, he was supposed to wear a white robe, making the young man appear as ethereal and transcendent as an immortal. But Qin Wangchuan was wearing a black and gold Xian robe, exuding an overt dominance. While it conformed to the Qin family's attire, it was clearly inappropriate for this banquet. "I think this one looks good," Qin Wangchuan responded softly. Yin Qiuying nodded after hearing this, saying no more. After gently patting his mother's hand to reassure her, Qin Wangchuan slowly walked forward alone. Invisible steps seemed to support his feet. With each step, an ancient lamp in the hall lit up, illuminating his deep-set eyes. Finally, he stood before the main seat, his gaze sweeping over everyone in the hall. Everyone. His voice was not loud, but it rolled like thunder, clearly reaching everyone's ears. "This banquet today, I am deeply honored by your presence. Since you have taken your seats, then." The corners of his lips curved slightly, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. "Let the banquet begin." Immediately after, a burst of congratulations erupted in the hall, and various forces rose to their feet, raising their cups in celebration. The important figures discussed important matters, while the less important ones focused more on Qin Wangchuan. The reason was simple. The young man's aura was simply too unique. Eternal life, immortal body plus supreme Tao heart plus years of heaven and earth treasure nourishment plus 25 times the origin. Under these numerous enhancements, his aura reached an incredible level. It wasn't an ethereal transcendence, but rather a kind of deterrence. That's right. He merely sat there. Even when fully restrained, an unimaginable pressure still emanated, constantly asserting his presence. An oppressive feeling of unprovoked majesty. But at the same time, this aura also made most female cultivators utterly infatuated, as if their souls had been drawn away, staring blankly at him. Even Jiang Xuanli, who had seen many handsome men in the world, had a slight pause in her gaze and couldn't look away. Ninth young master is so heaven-defying immediately upon entering the world. One can barely imagine what his future holds. Someone noticed this scene and sighed softly. His strength aside, just seeing this scene alone indicated that there would definitely be no shortage of beautiful women in his future. Amidst this clamor, Li Qingwan's gaze never left Qin Wangchuan. She lightly tapped her wine cup with her fingertip, her lips curving into a half-smile. It wasn't until most of the guests had finished offering their greetings that Li Qingwan moved forward and sat beside Qin Wangchuan. Qin Wangchuan was not surprised to see her approach, but his gaze occasionally fell to the side. The Li family members were currently conversing happily with the Qin family elders. Watching this scene, he asked Li Qingwan without turning his head, "How is it that I seem to have heard that the person I'm to be betrothed to is from the Li family? Don't you have any news?" Chapter 38 George Han come. "Oh." Li Qingwan's fingertips gently caressed her wine cup. Hearing this, she tilted her head slightly, a meaningful smile playing on her lips. "I wonder what news the ninth young master is referring to. For example, her name, her personality, and so on." Qin Wangchuan said, his gaze still fixed on the elders, who were now discussing how to form an alliance in the future. Li Qingwan chuckled, tapping the rim of her cup with her finger, producing a crisp sound. "That I do not know. I only heard that she possesses the bearing of a prodigy with unparalleled phoenix grace. I imagine she must be worthy of the young master." Her voice was soft and slow, with a hint of lazy teasing. This scene caused many people to turn their heads. They wanted to look but dared not. If the imperial dynasty's Princess Jiang Xuanli was a blooming peony, enchanting and charming, Then Li Qinghuan was a sword forged in ice. Her entire being was condensed with frost, and even before the blade was drawn, its chill had already seeped into one's bones. No need for a clang, no need for blood. Just a sidelong glance. 3 parts of chilling aloofness pressing against the throat, 7 parts of arrogance flaying the heart. As for why they held such a perception, the prodigy saint she had killed or injured understood profoundly. The bearing of a prodigy, unparalleled phoenix grace. Qin Wangchuan's fingertips gently tapped the table, a hint of playfulness surfacing in his eyes. That sounds like someone praising herself. You truly don't know? Li Qinghuan met his gaze, not shying away in the slightest. Instead, she leaned in slightly, her red lips parting. I don't know. The two looked at each other for a moment, and the clamor in the hall seemed to be cut off, the surrounding air solidifying slightly. Swear it. Of course, her eyes curved, a mischievous glint appearing in them, like a cat that had stolen fish. She gently tapped the table with her fingertip. If I'm lying to you, I'm a puppy. Keep pretending. Let's see how long you can keep it up. With Qin Wanchuan's intelligence, how could he not notice? It was just that Li Qinghuan was too strange. She was cold to others, but only showed her playful side to him. All right then, I'll play along with you. As the wine flowed and rounds passed, the hall grew increasingly boisterous. In the corner of the hall, Yi Jianwei's slender fingers glided over the zither strings, a melody of Qing Ping Lu flowing like water. Suddenly, her fingertips paused imperceptibly, but the zither music did not falter in the slightest. She immediately transmitted a message. Young master, there's someone not right in the southeast corner. Understood. Qin Wanchuan's fingertips gently tapped the table, his gaze subtly sweeping over all the guests, finally resting on a thin young man by a pillar in the southeast corner. Without a doubt, he was Han Han. Although he had no aura and was difficult to notice, all of this was useless in front of Yi Jianwei. After all, she had no eyes, nor did she use divine sense. Instead, she observed the world through her zither music. It's almost time, Qin Wanchuan murmured in his heart. When the banquet is in full swing, someone will suggest a martial arts exchange. Judging by what happened later, the person who proposed this was probably also an accomplice. Sure enough, the next moment someone slammed the table and stood up. Everyone, it's rare to have such a gathering of heroes today. Why don't we spar with martial arts and explore the Tao together? Here it comes. Qin Wanchuan's eyes narrowed, and he looked up. He saw Qin Wudao standing with his hands behind his back, a white robe as pure as snow, its sleeves fluttering without wind, like an immortal descended to the mortal world. Its big brother. It was also within Qin Wangchuan's expectations. After all, the only people who could say such a thing were big brother and fourth brother. Chu Qingyan. Qin Wudao uttered a name, then walked out of the hall without looking back, saying coldly, Do I have to invite you? Chu Qingyan chuckled and followed him. I thought you had forgotten our last challenge. Be careful. This time I came prepared. Before his words finished, a white figure suddenly floated out from the seats on the east side. The white-robed man's folding fan swished open. With a gentle smile, he first glanced at Chu Qingyan, then his gaze fell on Qin Wudao. 2 against 1. Would that be fair to you? The candlelight in the hall suddenly flickered cheerfully, and a black-robed figure swished to their feet from the seats on the west side. The wine gourd hanging from his waist swayed with his movement, spilling a few drops of mellow fragrance. Since it's already 2 against 1, he casually slung his heavy sword over his shoulder, the copper bells tied to its tassel jingling. How about 3 against 1? Whatever. Qin Wudao didn't even pause his steps, his voice remaining indifferent. Come at me together. The people in the hall watched the departing figures, and the place immediately erupted into a buzz. As expected of Qin Wudao, facing several prodigies, he didn't even bother to turn his head. A young cultivator exclaimed, his face flushed with excitement. If we were to discuss who among the current great emperors is stronger or weaker, I fear no one could decide. The old man next to him stroked his long beard, a sharp glint flashing in his cloudy eyes. But to speak of who is the leader among those in the quasi-emperor realm, he looked at the white-robed figure in the field, his voice suddenly deepening. None other than Qin family's Wudao. This demeanor, this composure. I heard that even Chu Qingyan couldn't last 10 moves against him last time. Someone whispered in admiration. Amidst the continuous praises from the crowd, only Qin Wanchuan's mouth twitched. He exchanged a glance with his second brother in the corner. Big brother isn't calm and composed at all. He knew too well. In Qin Wudao's undifferentiated equality for all beings' eyes, whether you were a peerless prodigy or a wild dog by the roadside, you were. All just moving stick figures. It's true, he'd expose himself if he pretended for one more second. But quasi-emperor leader? That title is the first I've heard of it. Qin Wangchuan sighed slightly. Although he knew Big Brother was strong, he hadn't imagined he was this strong. He was already a quasi-emperor, and even called the leader. Seeing this scene, fourth brother Qin Kwanga burst into laughter and also stood up, looking towards the Yin family and saying, "Since Big Brother has already started, Yin, how long are you going to wait?" The atmosphere in the hall suddenly boiled. A red figure erupted from the Yin family's seats, and Yin leaped into the field, his robes fluttering like fire. "Ha ha ha, Qin Old Fourth, I came today just for that line of yours." He roared with laughter, smashing the table in front of him. As wine splattered, he pointed at Qin Kwanga. "If I don't beat you until you kneel and call me Grandpa, I'll take your surname." Qin Kwanga sneered, tearing open his brocade robe to reveal a muscular physique. "With your pathetic blazing heaven art?" The two cursed and swore as they walked out, shattering all the tables and chairs along the way. Most banquets are like this, with the same few people, so this kind of thing is very common, Li Qingwan explained thoughtfully. Qin Wangchuan nodded, then stood up under her surprised gaze. "Is there someone you want to fight?" "No, but there's something I must do," Qin Wangchuan said, then walked out of the hall on his own. A flurry of whispers immediately broke out in the hall. "Is the ninth young master going to find someone to fight? I wonder who it will be." A young cultivator's eyes widened, forgetting to put down the wine cup in his hand. The old man beside him stroked his beard and mused. "The most likely one should be that person from the Yun family, similar in age, and both possess immortal bones." "Not necessarily." Another person slammed the table. "It could also be someone from the Zhou family. The Zhou family angered the Qin family before, so perhaps this is an opportunity to establish dominance." In the corner, several female cultivators whispered to each other. "Who do you think the ninth young master has cultivated to? I can't see through him. The eternal life, immortal body cultivates slowly, so he should be at the third stage, right? You forgot the ninth young master has immortal bones all over his body. I guess he should be at the fourth stage." "Fourth stage? I don't think that's very likely." Amidst the discussions, Li Qingwan watched Qin Wangchuan's receding figure, her fingertips unconsciously caressing her wine cup. She suddenly realized that this little fiancé, who had always been low-key, now had a back that exuded a sense of resolute determination. At the hall entrance, Qin Wangchuan's steps suddenly paused. His back to the crowd, his robes subtly lifted by the draft, he suddenly turned, his gaze fixed directly on the corner of the great hall. "Han Han!" This clear shout echoed through the hall, startling several maids, causing the trays in their hands to tremble slightly. All the guests whispered amongst themselves, looking around, but they did not know who Han Han was. Li Qingwan's fingertips paused, her wine cup stopped at her lips, and she followed Qin Wangchuan's gaze. She saw a thin young man slowly straightening up from behind a pillar in the furthest corner. The half-eaten spiritual fruit in his hand paused at his mouth, but his eyes were as bright as stars, meeting Qin Wangchuan's gaze without flinching. Though his figure was slender, his back was held perfectly straight, like a new bamboo stubbornly growing in the wind and snow. "Since you came for me, why hide? Come." Waiting was not Qin Wangchuan's nature. He would take the initiative. Chapter 39, he didn't say a single extra word, just like he didn't pick a single extra leaf. Though Han Han's heart was flustered when his name was suddenly called, he didn't show it on his face, because he knew that if he made any mistake, he would die, along with his sister. But the person behind him might not. Qin Wangchuan had already informed the Qin family's high-ranking members that he would be assassinated. Previous simulations had already revealed that the person behind Han Han had also come to the banquet. The moment his name was called, with the Qin family great emperor carefully observing everyone's expressions, it would be simple to pinpoint that person, and then follow the trail. This was a strategy, an unavoidable open conspiracy. Young master found him. Listening to the voice transmission in his mind, Qin Wangchuan's lips curved into an arc as he looked at the young man in front of him. "You seem very surprised?" Han Han tilted his head slightly, a somewhat stiff smile pulling at his lips. "Of course I'm surprised. I didn't expect Your Highness to recognize an unknown nobody like me." After speaking, he used a hand, glistening with fine sweat, to touch the black nail hidden in his sleeve, the muscles beneath the fabric tensing extremely tight. His clear eyes looked directly at Qin Wangchuan, with an undercurrent seemingly surging in the depths of his pupils. Han Han didn't know what he was thinking and continued, "I wonder, young master, let's skip the pleasantries." Qin Wangchuan waved a hand, pointing to the formation beneath their feet. "Our conversation won't reach the banquet hall." As he spoke, his gaze, sharp as a torch, met Han Han's. "Han Han, how about coming over to my side?" Han Han's body stiffened abruptly, his pupils contracting instantly to the size of a needlepoint. His hand, hidden in his sleeve, clutched the black nail tightly, his knuckles turning bluish-white from the excessive force. "Is this an invitation? He actually wants to recruit me?" But my sister is still in their hands if I betray them. Your Highness is joking. Han Han pulled at the corners of his mouth, revealing a smile uglier than crying, his voice as dry as sandpaper scraping. How could an ant like me be worthy? Your sister is no longer with us. Qin Wangchuan suddenly interrupted, his voice extremely low, yet every word was like a knife. Han Shui died long ago, but the blood feud of the Han family's 36 members remains unavenged. Even if only you are left, you should live for them. So, come over to my side, I can help you. These words were like a heavy hammer, striking Han Han's heart fiercely. He staggered back half a step, his mind shaking. Dead as expected. With the ruthless character of that mysterious person, how could he truly let my sister and I reunite? He hadn't been idle all these years, but had been diligently collecting information about his sister, and naturally knew the truth. But he was unwilling to believe it. A person without power doesn't even have the right to question the truth. Since that's the case, Han Han looked at the person in front of him and suddenly chuckled. His laughter tinged with a hint of madness, yet a glimmer of tears flickered in the corners of his eyes. Help me. Isn't everything because of you big figures that my family ended up in this state? Then he slowly raised his head, his gaze gradually turning vicious, his eyes bloodshot. I'm just a small person. I have no choice. Before he finished speaking, the black nail in his sleeve flashed with a cold light, bringing forth a black afterimage that shot straight for Qin Wangchuan's throat. Qin Wangchuan gazed at the ferocious-looking young man before him, a hint of complex emotion flashing in his eyes. He knew Han Han's life better than anyone. This seemingly frail young man, deep down, possessed a purity that few could match. He had good talent and was upright. Back at the bottom of Suspended Heaven Cliff, Han Han could have picked all 9 leaves of the Dao grass, but in the end, he only picked 6, not one more. He had 1,000 reasons to fall into darkness, but looking into his eyes, one knew that his heart remained pure. What a pity, Qin Wangchuan sighed softly, his spiritual power condensing into a blade in his palm, killing intent fully revealed in his eyes. However, in this flash of lightning, Han Han's figure suddenly flickered strangely. The Supreme Void Step activated, leaving an afterimage in its original spot, while his true body instantly appeared beside Qin Wangchuan. Only, this move was not for attack. The fierce demeanor from moments ago was completely gone. He clutched Qin Wangchuan's arm tightly with one hand, his eyes filled with a hint of earnestness and anxiety. I know very little about him, only that he is from an Imperial clan. Han Han whispered urgently, a trace of black blood oozing from the corner of his mouth. This black nail might help you. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly coughed violently, spitting out a large mouthful of dark blood, his face instantly turning as pale as paper. Yet he still used his last ounce of strength to push the black nail into Qin Wangchuan's hand. After all this was done, Han Han's body slowly slid down, falling to the ground as lightly as a withered leaf. His once clear eyes were still open, but they had lost all their luster. He died. The restriction embedded within his body triggered, instantly killing him. Perhaps the person behind him was alerted, or perhaps not. But what difference did it make? He was just a small person. Dead is dead. Qin Wangchuan stood in place, the black nail with a sealing talisman lying in his palm. When it was handed over, the sharp side faced outwards, as if fearing it would injure him. From the very beginning, Han Han had no intention of tearing off the talisman paper, no intention of using this black nail. What he wanted was an opportunity for the Qin family's young master to know everything and avenge him. He really didn't say a single extra word. Qin Wangchuan looked down at the young man, a stranger yet incredibly familiar. Just like when you picked the leaves, you didn't pick a single extra one. The Qin family's guards had already arrived, and they lifted the body. Qin Wangchuan knelt down and slowly closed Han Han's eyes. The young man's eyelashes trembled slightly in his palm, finally settling into stillness. Qin Wangchuan silently placed the blood-stained black nail on the brocade handkerchief held by a nearby guard. The lingering warmth on his fingertips quickly dispersed by the night wind. Still not making a move? A low shout exploded like thunder. In an instant, the Qin family great emperor made his move. A cold light flashed, and the 7 previously marked suspicious individuals were subdued without causing any disturbance. Qin Wangchuan slowly rose, the wind from his swirling robes brushing over the young man's pale face, like an unheard sigh. I was too naive. Since one is a chess piece, how can one choose where to land? The moment these words fell, the aura around him suddenly changed. His previously restrained spiritual power exploded within his meridians like ignited gunpowder. In his eyes, which were usually as calm as a deep abyss, now surged a furious flame capable of incinerating the heavens. Since you like to play so much, like to play chess, you should know. Once a piece is moved, there is no regret. Qin Wanchuan's voice echoed between heaven and earth. Today, not a single one of you will leave. After speaking, he suddenly looked up at the sky, a cold glint surging in his eyes. How much longer do you intend to watch? In an instant, the supreme void step was activated, and Qin Wanchuan's figure shot into the clouds like a startled swan. The moment the Ji was unsheathed, the entire world darkened. A brilliant sword light streaked across the sky, accompanied by a clear shout. Shatter! Where the sword light passed, the clouds were torn apart. Hidden magic treasures shattered as their effects were broken, fragments falling like rain. Above the firmament, a giant golden heavenly eye was forced to appear, with terrifying Tao patterns flowing within its pupil. Is that the heavenly eye? A great emperor is peeking. How could anyone spy on the Qin family banquet without being noticed? The banquet guests were in an uproar, and what shocked them even more was, how did Qin Wanchuan detect a gaze that even the Qin family great emperor had not noticed? The golden heavenly eye slowly closed, dissipating into the void realm. With the trump card, the black nail, and the accompanying person falling into the Qin family's hands, the person behind it would naturally not give up so easily. It was very likely that they would try to forcibly seize them. But what happened after that was beyond Qin Wanchuan's control. His figure floated back to the ground, and with his robes fluttering, he stepped towards the main banquet hall. With each step he took, a circle of spiritual patterns appeared on the blue stone beneath his feet, and his aura grew a bit stronger. The spiritual power couldn't be suppressed. He was about to break through. However, at this moment, a young girl in a red and gold ruchuan suddenly rose, the gold threads on her skirt flowing like flames under the lamplight. Her slender, jade-like finger pointed directly at Qin Wanchuan, her voice containing 3 parts of shock and anger, and 7 parts of disbelief. That sword strike just now was clearly my Li family sword seal. Where did you secretly learn it from? Qin Wanchuan didn't even spare her glance, his steps as steady as a towering peak as he walked past the girl. As his dark robe billowed, a sharp surge of qi directly pushed the girl back, and his cold voice carried an irresistible pressure. Don't block the way. His gaze swept over the crowd, directly locking onto the black-clad figure at the Ji family seating. Ji Wuchen. His voice was not loud, yet it made everyone's hearts tremble, as if thunder surged in his eyes. How much longer do you intend to sit there?